It's Friday, September 22nd, 2023. Let's start off with our traditional shill segment. Patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare is where you can go to support the show via that platform. If you go to the show homepage, you will find that on the right, there are several blocks. One will be a Patreon block, which I've already mentioned. There's one that has a PayPal logo that will take you to the PayPal address, which I think is too complicated. I don't think I can short URL that one. There is a book with a bookmark on it that will take you to Lando's Amazon author page to buy his books. You'll see a skull that will take you to my Linktree with all my art links, which, because now there's a million different things, now that Twitter has erupted into, chaos, now I have to add more and more things to that, and it just gets longer and longer. But at least it's one central location.
You know what? I realized something funny about Twitter the other day that I was like, that's not good. Yeah. I always like to find when websites do things that they don't realize if they're giving things away. So there's a lot of artists who don't They don't want to post the full-size images of their art, right? Because they want to hold on to it. They don't want people... Right. I totally get it, right? But did you know that if you do a Google search for people's art... So you literally do a Google image search for people's art, and you attach the word Twitter to it, right? It shows you all the art people have posted on Twitter. Yeah. And then through that little system, you can download the full-size images of their art. You get it uncompressed. Okay.
There is something that most people who are even mildly technically adept know, which is that most people who aren't don't know the fact that if you post something and it looks small and you use the full size, you can get to that image. Just most people aren't aware of that.
Yeah,
no,
it's the same way that what is it like? Displate does this thing where they don't want you to see their limited images, so they put this thing over it, this fog, right? Yes. If you copy the image and paste it in a text message or something like that, the image pops up without the fogging,
right?
And it's maybe that's just me.
There's lots of stuff. People also seem to think that when they upload a YouTube thumbnail that there's no way for an outside user to get it. Yes, there is. It's very easy. Yeah, you just have to know what to paste.
The other day, Men's Health. So as a Men's Health and Outside Magazine, a lot of these have the paywalls up on them now, where they give you 3 free articles or something like that.
Yes, which there are plugins for almost every browser to get around.
Dude,
those.
I realized the other day that if you just want to read an article, you just put it in Reader View, and I only keep Safari for this. You throw it in Reader View, and Reader View for some reason destroys their ability to stop you from reading more of their articles.
Well, doesn't Reader View strip the images out?
No, the images are still there as long as they're... Actually, you know what Reader View does? It strips out the advertising. It strips out everything.
Well, all right, so then whatever they've got tied to that is what's doing it. So I was going to say, because it's got to be disabling something in there.
Yeah, so what you end up getting is you get the article with whatever relevant pictures, right? Like basic pictures. You're not going to get a ton of them. But the basic pictures, you get the article... And then you're just oh, okay, I guess I didn't have to, and it's just, it's amusing that there's these very basic tools out there that sidestep all this kind of,
Yeah.
I know.
There's lots of
anyway.
But yes, a lot of people don't know that.
Sorry, Twitter. Yes, that's where I got off.
No, so I was just saying my link tree gets longer by the day because I have to put different things in there because, I mean,
Yeah,
thankfully, most of the people that I follow on Twitter, for the most part, are off. So at some point, I will be deleting that account because there's just nobody posting on there anymore, so it's fine. But anyway, that's why the link tree is good because I can just add whatever I want into it, and it just it's one central place instead of having to keep adding buttons and everything else. So, and then the code Ozone still does 2 months free on Libsyn to my knowledge. So that is the show segment out of the way. All right, I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, here we go.
Let me just get the phrasing right.
Yep.
I want to make sure I phrase it right. Okay. Now, I know that you're not a sports person. and generally neither am I, except when it comes to baseball, which me and my wife both like to watch.
It's completely went in a different direction
game.
than I thought.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is very, 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 very different.
Okay.
So we're watching a baseball game, and one of the commentators at one point in the game said this phrase, which I don't know if you've ever heard this before.
Okay.
But I never had.
Okay.
And he said, when times are grim, be the grim reaper. Now, the context...
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Have you heard of this?
Hold on. I heard this phrase before.
Okay.
Not only have I heard this phrase before, but I derived my phrase, be the bad guy.
Okay.
From that phrase.
What is your understanding?
Okay, so the way I learned that phrase, I don't know what the sports, but the way I learned that phrase, I can't remember where I learned it. It's kind of one of those things. It's in my vernacular. You know what I mean? Like I have a whole lot of weird phrases. But the whole idea was, for me, it has had several meanings. Which is one, when you are scared, don't be scared. Make yourself the bad guy, because if you're the bad guy, you're the person that everything else should be afraid of, right? And the other version of it is basically it's a modifier of when things get tough, like that phrase, when things get tough, the tough get going.
Yes.
Which is essentially the harder things get, the harder you need to get. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are
this is fast. All right. So when this phrase was said, I got really hung up with it because my understanding of that phrase is what yours is and what most people's is, which is somebody said, here's another way to say it. When things get shitty, be the apex asshole. And I'm like, that's Grim Reaper to me is a negative person. It's a negative persona.
It's essentially, if you're in a situation that is that bad, then you need to be that bad to match the situation.
Okay.
Right?
And my wife took it as, oh no, that means you should, strive to excel and to be the best. And I'm like, I don't think so.
Well, hold on. Okay. So this is the disconnect between the two of you, right?
Sure.
You use the phrase apex asshole, right?
Well, that's what I read somewhere else, which was that's my understanding.
No, I know, and that's the thing is that what it means essentially is it's kind of like you're both right. In attempting to be taking the phrase when things get grim, be the grim reaper. Essentially, when things get bad, you need to excel at being the worst, at being more horrible than everything that you're up against.
Okay. See, and that's where for me, and I'll tell you why that phrase seemed like the wrong phrase in this context. Now, here's another thing where my wife and I are very different. I'll give you an example. Right? When it comes to sports, I tend to be much more savage in my assessment of things. For example, actually, I can take it out of sports. I can put it into board games. There's a reason my wife and I do not play Monopoly anymore. Right?
Nobody. There's a reason you never play Monopoly with loved ones.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is when we played a few times, I was merciless, and my wife thought I was being unnecessarily mean in the fact that I wouldn't let her get a free run on, say, if I owned the whole strip on one side. And I'm like, no. Like, that's not what this game is about. I don't put my boot on someone's throat to be nice to them.
We've played Uno with your wife. I know we have. She must know, like...
Yeah, but you know what? When there's other people involved, it dilutes my savagery. When it's just us, it's in pure force.
I don't know. I've played Uno with you.
Oh, no.
You're pretty vicious.
Well, yeah, but there's others. It's diluted by the presence of others.
I can tell my listeners right now that Joe and I have played Uno with some of my friends and gotten people so pissed off that they literally put their cards down on the table face up so we could see them because they had given up.
Yes, correct.
Not to mention, not even getting into the commentary, the shit talking around Uno.
No. That's
which
has
got
really the fun part.
I know has challenged someone I grew up with, challenged their relationship. And made me very happy that I was not driving back in the car with them.
No kidding.
So I have some idea of what your board game.
And that's the thing. Whereas my wife doesn't like it when fans at baseball games boo players who aren't performing up to their $4 or $5 million contracts. So I'm
hold on.
Let them do what they can.
Yeah. See, my mindset with this stuff, and here's the thing: I don't watch sports. I don't watch sports because I don't. Listen. I'm going to put this in another area of that it makes sense. Pornography, right?
Sure.
Because honestly, it always comes back to pornography. I don't watch pornography because I'd rather be doing that than actually fucking. I'd always rather be fucking. But I'm in a situation...
You wouldn't rather be doing that. The way you phrase that made it sound like you prefer pornography.
I'd rather be having sex. But sometimes I can't, therefore I watch pornography.
It's like, why go to a topless bar? I'll just stay home.
I kind of think of sports in the same way, for me personally, which is that why would I watch sports rather than go physically do something?
Sure.
But therein, if you're going to watch sports, right, I believe that Major League Baseball, basketball, football players, they deserve none of your pity because they get paid so much money to play fucking games.
Yes.
While so many people are starving and can't afford rent. So no, fuck them.
Well, and see,
let them be booed. Let them swing to the whim of the fucking mob.
Right.
I'm sorry. You're getting paid millions to play games.
I'm with you there.
Boo away.
No, I'm with you there. See, and this is this is a harsh dividing line between the way my wife and I approach things. I'm a Yankees fan. She's a San Francisco Giants fan. No, I like the Giants too. But the thing is, the Giants are one of these organizations that try to be very, California hippie, I guess, that everything's good and blah, blah, blah. And that's where when somebody says this phrase, I'm like, this is not what you like in a team. You understand that this is what the Yankees do. This is savage, cutthroat, throw the baseball at the guy's head type of thing is what this phrase means. And she thought it meant, she interpreted it as, no, just excel. And I'm like, no. The Grim Reaper is not
excel
a protagonist.
At being terrible, essentially, yeah.
Right. That's why I got hung up on it.
Break their legs if you can, as long as the ref doesn't see it.
Yes. And she said, oh, you're overthinking it. And I said, no, I don't think I am.
This is bad news Bears territory.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right, so okay,
yeah,
that's what I was curious. Because
the Grim Reaper is not the good guy. The
Grim
Reaper is the most bad guy.
That's what I said. I said the Grim Reaper is death. This is not the person you aspire to.
He wants you to be Darth Vader in Rogue One.
Right.
When things seem bad, get in that hallway and kill everybody.
This phrase, if it was said to baseball players, would mean that the pitcher should drill the batter in the head, so that they can't play anymore. That's what this means.
Depends.
No. Because that's the worst thing you can do in baseball is to throw a baseball at somebody's head.
Kill the batter. Okay.
Well, yes, obviously killing of any kind is not. But there were.
No, but that'll take you out of the game. If you get hit in the ball, that'll take you out of the game.
No, you can stay in, but you're almost certainly going to go into a concussion thing afterwards. You usually, if you don't get hit,
100-mile-per-hour missile hitting you in the head? I don't care if you're wearing a helmet.
No, that happens. In fact, it happened in a game we were watching today. If it hits the
ball,
helmet,
I mean, jeez, when it hits the balls. Remember that guy who got hit? I saw video clips of that.
You think that? Let me tell you something. It doesn't. That doesn't happen. They stay in. But the thing is, if you get hit in the bare face, yes, you are probably going to have a broken face and you'll come out immediately. That's different. If you get hit in the helmet, you usually stay in the game unless you really got hit the wrong way. Yeah. But then you're almost immediately going to go on to the concussion thing for a couple weeks.
So the big thing here is that your wife doesn't understand why you're far more brutal than she is.
She didn't understand why I reacted to that phrase with, I don't think that's a good thing to be saying. She thought she saw it completely differently. And I'm like, I don't know why this, If one of the Yankees commentators said that, I would have been like, yeah, he's
I,
right.
I wonder if it was just an off-the-cuff thing. He didn't even think about it.
Well,
He just pulled on whatever phrase, any euphemism he had in his head.
He, as a hippie Giants person, because he was a player and now he's a commentator.
Just did like a lighthearted version of
I
it.
think he applied California logic to what that phrase means without thinking about what that phrase means. And that's what I'm saying, is that's why I reacted so weirdly, and especially because this guy is a generally very peppy and he's a nerd, really. He's into Magic the Gathering.
It's like if he was like, well, you know what they say when things get tough, kill them all and let God sort them out.
That's what yes. That's almost like, well, if they've got their boot on your throat, then shoot them in the face and kill their children while you're at it. And you're like, yeah, do your best. Like, whoa,
and you're like, yeah, but don't boo the players. But don't boo the players, guys. Come on.
Right. Good. Okay. So we see. That's what I thought.
You're
overthinking this. And I said, well, of course, I overthink everything.
Do you remember that scene in what was it? The Last Boy Scout, where the football player pulls the gun out and starts shooting everybody?
Yes.
I always figured that's where sports were headed in the future.
Well, let me tell you something. Yeah. So yes. Okay. So that was my first thing.
But at the end of the day, these people, many of them are millionaires, and they are not struggling, and they are all doing better than you. I don't care how concussed they are.
Oh yeah,
they're all doing better than you. Not to mention the fact they choose to do this. They're not forced.
Listen, you and I are on the same page on this.
Yeah, I have pity for other people, but I know. But you know what? Listen. Your wife has a good heart. I think that's
she's a much kinder and more human-centric person than I am in many respects.
She is a very kind person, and I think that
also, the Giants do encourage that kind of hippy dippy, love each other thing.
Yeah, but like I said, she's a very kind person. I don't know how the two of you have gone on so long and so well, because
I can be that nice to one person. I can't do it past that. That's why.
And maybe that's why she doesn't get it. This is that whole, but you're so nuts. And my daughter, I have this with my daughter, where my daughter is always like, I said something to her about, well, honey, it's because you see me a different way. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, they see a large, tattooed, bearded man walk in the room. I was like, and there's very strong Viking murder vibes coming off of me, right? Yeah. My daughter's like, no, you're my daddy. You're just big and cuddly. And I'm like, I am to you.
Right.
I was like, but not to the rest of the world. Yeah. I was like, you look at me and you're like, oh, big cuddly daddy. Whereas the rest of the world's like, he may kill me if I look at his daughter weird. It's yeah, exactly. So no, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, something else.
Yes.
This is more of this is just funny because I hadn't even looked at this character in quite a while. So for whatever reason, the other day, as happens, you probably have the same thing with books. I just suddenly got these, I got images in my head that I wanted to draw. I was like, and every so often I'll lock onto some kind of pop culture thing for whatever reason. I don't even know why. There's usually no connective tissue that I'm aware of for it. And for whatever reason, I thought, what would be neat to do?
You know what I call that?
Yeah.
I have a phrase for that. Train came into the station. So I call it.
Sure. Train came into the station.
I have this mindset that you've got all these thoughts kind of running around your head, and I think some of them are on a long track, and at some point you thought about something and you kind of set your brain on this long track, and then one day you were just randomly walking around and that train came into the station and you were like, ha, yeah, you know what?
So for whatever
that is
reason,
pretty cool.
The other morning, the 6:15 to Brain Train Station came in.
Yeah.
And on that train, I thought I should do an image of Destro from G.I. Joe.
Oh,
Destro. Because Destro's got a metal head, which is...
Yeah.
And I never watched G.I. Joe when I was... I mean, I'm sure I did. I'm sure it was on, but I never really... I don't even remember any episodes. I just... in fact, I barely remember anything except for...
You haven't watched G.I. Joe, the cartoon?
No.
Oh, man. You need to get out there and find the... There's an episode... There's one episode of G.I. Joe, the TV show, which is so genius. I think everybody should see it, which is the episode where they go into the alternate world where G.I. Joe is evil and Cobra is good. And one of the G.I. Joes... Oh, man, it's great because they go over there and it's a bunch of... I think it's 3 or 4 Joes go over. and they basically realize, like, in this other world, Cobra is good, and they're almost crushed, and the GI Joe is bad. It's like authoritarian. And the end of the episode was that one of the GI Joes stays with the Baroness to help save the people in this world, and the rest of the Joes go back. And as a kid, it blew my mind, because it was the first time I really saw an alternate universe type of mindset, where I was like, you know, I hadn't at that point I hadn't watched Star Trek because I was a kid, so I hadn't gotten the Mirrorverse. It's very much a Mirrorverse thing. But imagine if you were watching Star Trek, and at the end of the episode, before they go back, Scotty was like, you know what, Kirk, I'm staying behind, and I'm gonna help the Klingons.
Well, didn't that happen in one of the Mirror Universe ones?
They never left anybody, did they?
Did they? That's a good question.
I don't think they ever left.
They never leave anybody.
Yeah, they never left a named character.
Maybe you're right. Maybe they didn't. I don't remember.
Yeah, but either way, yeah. I actually, I mean, other than that, the G.I. Joe cartoon was very silly. Nobody ever died. Lots of laser blasts. But the other thing is, fucking Destro. Destro always came off like a pimp to me. He always, like, depending on how they did him, he had that medallion and the big fur collar and the shiny head. There's just something very very pimp about him. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, right? So I started drawing because the head, I don't need a reference for the head. It's a steel bald guy. Like, it's just a bald guy. So I have a program that I can use to reference that. So I'm like, okay, I do the head, but I don't remember anything besides the metal head. Does he have I assume he has an outfit or something.
You don't have you just don't see, you don't have the image library that I do for
No, because I was never into G.I. Joe all that much, right?
Like, what was when you were a kid? What was do you remember your female action figures? And this is important because anybody who played with toys when they were a kid, right?
Well, especially it would have to have been.
You were. I'm speaking mostly for the male experience.
Sure.
You were never big on the female figures, but there were always female figures you let through because there was something cool about them.
Well, I remember, what was her name? Tigra? What was
Tila.
the Thundercats?
Tila.
No,
Chitara.
Yeah, Chitara, yeah. I remember Chitara.
Oh, man, you know what? They made so few Chitaras when I was a kid. I never had one.
Yeah, because the two cartoons I was into were Mask and Thundercats.
Were there any women? Were there any women in...
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, and I think, but that's a great thing right there. So Turtles, right? April O'Neil was not a combat character, right? No. So, like, if you had an April O'Neil figure, she was always the damsel in distress.
Well, you know what's funny? I always forget she was even there because I always liked the Turtles.
Yeah, well, there you go. Whereas with G.I. Joe,
you know what? I know what my female. It wasn't a figure though. It was Bonnie from Knight Rider because she was the tech woman.
Oh my God, they did figures for Knight Rider?
They didn't, but that's who I remember. I remember liking Bonnie because she was because she was always yelling at Michael and she kept the car running. So she was better than Michael was.
When I was a kid, most of the female action figures that I were allowed kind of into my boyish inner universe were G.I. Joe characters like Lady J, Scarlet, because Scarlet was like a badass who ran around with snake eyes. And Lady J was always around with Falcon or what was the other guy's name? So, but there was a lot more female characters. And they were a lot more badass. So I remember having a lot more female G.I. Joe figures because they just brought them into the mix, and they weren't damsels, like fucking Baroness. Like can you think of a lot of like adolescent boy properties of that time period where one of the main villains was a female?
Where the main villain was?
Yeah, like because I know that
the Baroness. That's the one I would think of.
Yeah, it's always the Baroness, right?
Well, listen, I had that awareness. It's not like I didn't know what G.I. Joe was.
Yeah, I know.
It's just that I didn't.
Like I said, I have a big library for it. So when you were talking about Destro, my thing is I was like the head, the big furry collar, the medallion, like.
Well, your
all
question.
In black leather.
Your question about female action figure, I did have one. Mask did have one, and I just said it to you.
Oh, did they?
Yes, it was Gloria Baker, who was a stunt driver who had the submersible car. And I always liked the fact that she basically had a submersible car. I had that.
That is cool.
No, Mask was great because it was the cars and the people. Like, you got both.
Yeah.
That was what was great about it. Yeah, she had that supercar. So I had that one.
That's cool. I never had that one. I had the truck.
Yeah. But also, the thing is that toy is nowhere near as cool looking as she was in the actual show.
Well, it never is, yeah.
No, it isn't. But
of course not, yeah.
No, if you look at how she looked in the show, she looked a lot better. She also looked very 80s, which I like. So.
But I didn't know at the time because I was living in the 80s.
No, because I didn't know. But this is what she looked like in the show. I'll send you this. So that's what she looked like in the show, and I remember that because I remember she had big red hair, and I
that doesn't look like that at all. That action figure. No,
it doesn't. Well, don't forget,
an awful
our action figures didn't look anything like the actual figures, except for like the wrestling ones. They're the only ones that got it right. The wrestling ones all look the same.
G.I. Joe did pretty good because they were doing like. No, most of the time, like the G.I. Joes looked vaguely like their characters. I mean, they had fucking like Sergeant Slaughter, who looked like Sergeant Slaughter.
Well, that was a rare. They got that one really right because he looks like an action figure because he's a wrestling guy. So yes, but anyway, yeah, I looked at Destro's outfit and I went, oh boy, that's
leather, metal. Pimp,
somebody was into something that designed that character because nobody else looks. I mean,
no, well, I mean.
Not like
no, because Baroness. There's a very S&M-y vibe to Baroness and Destro.
Okay, I'm going to disagree. What I'm going to say is that the Baroness looks like a fetished Nazi, and that's most of Cobra looked like. Black leather and red and black, which is, and I mean, Cobra Commander at one point had what was essentially a KKK mask without the point. That draped mask when he wasn't wearing the helmet. That's a KKK mask because they were supposed to be Nazis, but. Destro has a choker that is metal with studs on it. He has a collared leather shirt that goes to his navel.
It wasn't a collar. That was literally where his head was bolted on.
Well, whatever it was, that's
but he had a big gold medallion and then the big collar.
That's what I'm saying is he looks like something. I don't know what.
Did you ever see the later version of him they did? I always liked the later version.
Yes,
I did.
Yeah,
and, with the gold head and the shoulder thing.
Yeah, I don't like the gold head as much as I like the metal head.
It's less, yeah. The silver head is still the most. Yeah, he should have had like a big hat and a cane and been like,
Right. By the way, that is a mask. That's not his head. You know that, right?
No, I know that. Yeah, he's wearing a metal thing.
Yes, when you said that's where his head is attached, but he could have just had it on with like a buckle. No, he chose to have a studded choker. And like you said, a open bare-chested. He looks like he could front. He looks like he's from Judas Priest.
Is that his chest or is that like a shirt?
No, that's his chest. If you look up the images, because I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh no, he's wearing something. No. That's his chest. He's not wearing a shirt. Now look, I'm not saying that in a negative way. What I'm saying is he stands out from everybody else. He just looks a little different, which actually makes me love him more. Because I like the fact that he looks like an S&M Dr. Claw. And I'm fine with that. I really am. I'm not saying that as a negative. I think he has one of the best looks of a villain in any cartoon that I can remember when I was on. I just never noticed it when I was younger because why would I? I wasn't even thinking about it. And now I look at it and I'm like, whoa, that dude's into some shit, man. So fucking Destro's awesome. So just something like I said, I had G.I. Joe toys, and I think that was because my parents thought, oh, he's a boy, therefore he has to have G.I. Joe toys.
I just sent you a link, something I found.
Look at that.
That was cool.
Yeah. No, look, I see that. I see it. So
I just sent Joe a picture of Pimp Destro. Yeah.
If you haven't looked at Destro since you were younger and vaguely remember him just having a metal head, take a look at him. He's got more going on.
No, see, and that's the thing, yeah, because G.I. Joe is a thing of mine growing up. I still remember Destro. That's why when they said that Eccleston was going to play Destro, I was like, oh, this could be really cool. But then they played it in such a stupid way that it was like, no, this is.
Well, you know what though? Fundamentally, Destro has the Doctor Doom problem. How do you not make that look silly? It's hard because to me, I wouldn't even. If you don't animate the face, you know what I mean. You're kind of stuck. If you do animate the face, it looks stupid.
All right, no, hold on. If you can do the Mandalorian, you can do fucking Destro.
I don't know. In fact, it seems different when there's a face that you can see as opposed to nothing.
You have to play it the way they played it, like what's that movie with Hugo Weaving, V for Vendetta, right? You have to give the face You give it an expression, like a baseline, and then you let the actor, through their body language and their tone of voice, create the.
God, it's so tricky because V for Vendetta is so specific.
I know. I love that movie.
I love it too. But part of it is that you understand what that character is. That character is a representation.
Yeah.
not a person.
Well, so is
an
Destro.
individual.
Destro was kind of supposed to be he was kind of like capitalism gone wrong because he was supposed to be some kind of businessman. I mean,
he was a gun runner. He was the gun runner.
Yeah. So it's
but they also made it where he was very loyal and he was in love with the Baroness.
I mean, honestly, and that's really the way you go with it, because the sex scene between those two would be hilarious to watch on screen.
Yeah.
Just her licking that fucking helmet. Anyway, so we're tapping into like my childhood thoughts here.
No,
yes,
yeah.
But and Baroness has had this like life as like you said, this very for me, she's become this kind of very S&M-y sex symbol. Like whenever you see pictures of her, she's always
that's what people
really
have made her into, because
yeah.
people
And
just
the glasses,
see her and they're like, oh, bondage.
The glasses were the smartest thing they ever could have done.
Oh,
with that
you're
character.
you're not kidding.
Oh,
The skin,
man.
a cat suit and glasses are always a winner. I'm just going to tell you. Hold on. What is that? What are the two characters? See, I don't even know. Scooby-Doo. There's the two female characters. Which one do you think gets more of the porn stuff? It's the one with glasses. It's not the other one. It's not, what was her name? Daphne, and then the other one is...
it's Velma. It's fucking
Velma,
man.
Velma's the one you see everywhere.
100% Velma.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know, the and that's because you listen. This is two nerds. You're talking to two. There's two aging nerds. Yeah, nerding. There's two aging nerds here. Of course, we like Velma.
Yeah,
glasses, the skirt, really intelligent, right? No, I fucking love that. That's fantastic.
Yep.
You know, but yes, catsuit and glasses is also very good.
That's very good.
Yes. So did you draw?
Anyway,
you drew Destro?
I've started. I have the sketch. It's pretty. It's good. It's where I want. I'm getting it. You know why I really want to do it? I don't often draw metal, and I really want to do a metal face. So that's why I was like, Destro.
If you do that, print it out on that metallic paper that you can get. That'll look really good.
Well, I'm going to do it on a card. But I'm also going to do it large. I'm going to do a big.
Oh, you should get that. What's that ink you can use? It's like metal.
I have metallic pens. I have them.
Ooh,
the problem is, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
To do a big image like that, God.
You take a lot of
them. It's not even that, but they don't go. They don't meld well with other markers.
No, and they don't go where you want them to sometimes.
There's probably a way to do it. Yeah, there's probably a way to do it if I did it right. I could probably actually do silver metallic paper and just print the black parts and then leave the other parts empty, and then the metal would fill it in.
You know what? This is a side note thing.
I was done anyway. That's all.
That's fine. I have recently looked at a lot of the stained glass art that they did for the Magic the Gathering stuff.
They're great. They're fantastic.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Now
there's one person in particular. Her stuff is outstanding.
I know, but I realized why yours stands out to me. Not just because it's you.
All right.
A lot of these other people. So you don't do realism.
I do
right?
not.
Yeah, you don't. You are very cartoony. You're very right. But when you did your stained glass, the way your mind works is you looked and you said, "Oh, what does stained glass look like?" Right? Mm-hmm. And so you actually made stained glass windows, something that could very easily be converted into stained glass. Well, and you gave it a stained glass effect. Yes. Whereas I found that a lot of the Magic the Gathering art, it's very much people who want to do realism and then trying to lay it down to some kind of geometric.
Oh, and then they just inserted lines over it in some cases.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. I was like, it's not that it's not pretty, but it's not stained glass.
Well, and that's... I completely understand that, because there's my card. It came up when I did stained glass. Yeah. That's cute.
And the only reason I bring that up is because like my wife does glass fusing, so she's always been interested in stained glass, which is different from the glass fusing, but she's been interested in it. So we've talked about it a lot, and we've looked at the tools and kind of the patterns to how you'd make it. And so when you were like, I'm doing this thing, she was saying that there's actually glass that you can get that looks exactly like that pattern. They call it irid glass, right?
Yeah.
And she was actually really impressed that you were able to make it look like that glass.
Well, because I started by looking at stained glass windows from churches. That's what I did.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like when I look at your stuff, I see stained glass windows. Whereas a lot of there's an artist that I really like. Sorry, I've got arses on the mind because we're talking about the Baroness. There's an artist that I really like. Name was I think it's pronounced Anato Finstark.
Right? Yes, we've talked about this artist before.
Yeah, and he did Magic the Gathering stuff, right? Yeah. I love this guy's art. I really do. He's, I'm starting to realize that I have a short list of artists that I adore. But he's on that list. I love his art. But
I have to forward you something that somebody sent me about Klimt. I will forward it to you.
When I found his Magic the Gathering art that he did, I was like, okay, this is cool. I was like, but it ain't stained glass. Like it's very much, it's very neat, but it feels like something else to me. So, and I don't know
I think that's kind of like if they came to me and said, "We'd like you to do an image in colored pencil." I'd be like, all right.
Yeah.
And I would.
We want you to do a Frank Frazetta, and you're like, well, it's not really my style.
But I would basically try to make my stuff into a Frazetta. So that's what I think a lot of them do, which makes complete sense. But yes, I know what you mean because I've seen some that are the ones that the one that I really think is utterly sensational. Who is this person? Hold on, let me find.
It's still beautiful art. I'm just thinking about the actual, the actual brief from the
Magali Villeneuve did the Dominaria United Basic Lands stained glass. Look those up.
You're gonna have to send me a link.
All right, I'll just send you a link.
You're throwing so many words at me here.
Hold on, I can actually just copy the image. Send. Look at that. That is fucking sensational. I love those.
Yeah. No, and that's what I mean is that those look like this person did break those down into an actual window.
Yes.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. There's a couple of artists that I follow and I've talked to and I just gush over their stuff because they're so good at it.
You know what? So. It's so wonderful to still be gushing over stuff.
Oh, man, that's the best part about art.
Yeah,
man, I always find new people.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that there's still so much to gush over.
Oh, there is.
There is. But I did listen. But I caught myself doing an old man thing the other day, and I caught myself.
Here we go.
Stopped.
Oh, speaking of age, that was the other thing. Go ahead.
I have to put this in a way that doesn't give too much information away. So somebody I know recently talked about changing their name. Right?
Sure.
This is a trans thing, right?
Sure.
And I realize I've always had a hang up with this. And it's not anything to do with being any issue with trans people and of any kind. It's a philosophical problem I have with people picking their own names. And it's essentially this idea that I think it's me personally. I think it's wrong when you get to pick your own name because I feel like the first lesson in how much the universe does not give a shit about you comes from the fact that you don't get to choose whether or not you exist. Like when you're born, like you don't choose whether or not you're going to be born. A couple gets together and has you, and then they name you, and. This goes into a conversation I was having with my son where he's talking about Transformer names, and he's like, his name is this, and he's like, it's very funny that his name is this, and he's really good at that, and I'm like, no, that's not funny. I was like, that's the point, is that they were like, oh, this guy's really good at this, so we're gonna call him this that sounds just like it. It's very sort of Native American, right? And I was saying that it's like I don't think you should get to name yourself. I think that because the thing is. No one's going to give themselves a shitty name. Like you had, we had a teacher in my school. His name was Mike Griffone, right?
Right.
Being able to endure your name, I think, is one of the first lessons in life where you're like, yeah, this sucks, but I have to come to terms. I never liked my name when I was growing up. I never liked my nickname that my family gave me. And it wasn't until years later on that I came to terms with my name, right? I don't know but the thing is, if you'd asked me what I wanted to name myself, I would have come up with something really cool. But the thing is, there's this innate, you talk about what was the word you used for asshole when you're looking for like key asshole? My brain's like Proximo Centauri. That's not it. Alpha asshole, whatever it was. Something like
apex
that, right?
asshole.
Apex asshole, right? Yeah. So the whole naming yourself thing feels very apex asshole, because you're always going to come up with a cool name, and then like there's an asshole quality to that, right? So I had this rolling around my head, and I was being all grumpy about it. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, this is me. This is my thing. I need to accept that my own philosophies are my own philosophies, and I need to not let this shit pour out on anybody else. And I then totally shifted gears and was like, you know what? I was like, you name yourself whatever you want. I was like, and I realized that that's kind of the thing is, I guess you get older, it's very easy to just mire in your own vision of things. But sometimes you have to sit there and say, you know what? This is my vision of things, but it doesn't hurt anybody for people to just fuck off and name themselves whatever they want. So I caught myself and I changed gears, and I was, dare I say, slightly proud of myself for catching it. You know what I mean? Because it's very easy to just be like, this is the way the world should be. You know? Yeah, so it's like, no, I don't like it. I still don't like it, but I'm not going to, I'm making a concerted effort not to give people shit. It's just that, you know, you understand, right? No one ever gives themselves a dumb name. Like, a lot of us have dumb names. Like, you're Joe. Right? Would you have named yourself Joe? At some point in your life, you would have given yourself a different name.
You know what? Honestly,
you might have been Hal. If you get it at the right time in your life.
I am aware that many other people have struggled with their identity far more than I have. I have never really had that struggle. I really haven't. I've always kind of known, once I got past the teenage, shit, and kind of locked in.
Yeah.
And that lock-in was pretty easy for me, more or less. I was 90% who I was right when I got to that point. And I didn't make any later discoveries, even, going,
no, I evolved, but I also made an effort to evolve,
No, but it's not that I didn't look at other avenues of things.
No, but you knew baseline the kind of person that you were.
Yeah, I just went, that's nice, but it ain't for me. And that's all.
And you felt the name was okay.
Yeah, the name's fine. Yeah. And so that's why I'm saying that for me, I'm like,
a fan of my name.
Well,
it wasn't until later. It wasn't until much later that I got okay with it. And then the funny thing is, once I got okay with my name, then I got a great nickname on top of that. And I was like, oh, I'm fine with that.
And see, that thing is exactly why my reaction always been, if you want to change your name, there's enough shit in life. Be happy with as much as you can be.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to not let myself get into that mindset. Just be like, you know what? It's fine. If you want to call yourself Ravenclaw, that's cool. There's not enough Ravenclaws in the world. That's neat. And I'm trying to embrace that idea. Yeah.
That's how I look at it. There's enough misery that we make for ourselves and make onto ourselves. Why make more?
Yeah, if you can keep yourself open-minded and you can just let people evolve and do their thing, I think you can get older and get older in a happier way. Because otherwise you sit there and you're like, they shouldn't do that. And it's like, yeah, but why shouldn't they do that?
Well, that's
just because I have a hang up about names, and it's like, no, I'm, we were talking earlier about being brutal people. Obviously I'm far too brutal a person, because I sit there and say, nah, your name sucking is the first brutal lesson you get out of life. And it's like, no, you're right. The world shouldn't be that bad. It's just that, but then my brain says, okay, when do you get to name yourself then? Right? Like, at what age? And at what age, at what point do you look back at past self and go, maybe Optimus was not the best name?
Well, that's the thing is, and that's why I would never rename myself, because my taste that way is fleeting. That's why I never got a tattoo outside the needles thing too. It's because if I got a tattoo I wanted to get at 20 or 25, I'd look at it now and go, oh God, why did I do that?
Oh, and the thing is, and luckily for me is that my tattoos, their meanings can change as time goes on.
Yeah, for me, I would just be bothered, especially if it was off center. Oh, forget it. I would never not be bothered by that. So if you called me tomorrow and said,
the canvas is imperfect.
Not in my world. Let's put it this way: imperfections I didn't have control over, I can accept. Those that I created, I cannot. So if you called me and said, I'm going to change my name to Honeycup Gorpdick, I would be like, oh, that's great.
Gorpdicks. Not enough Gorpdicks in the world.
I would hang up. I would look at the air and make a face, but I would never tell you.
You know, my wife and I debated changing our last names. Did I tell you about this?
What, to Gorpdick?
No, not Gorpdick.
Oh.
No. So when my father passed away, my wife and I were talking about how when there's my mother is kind of the last connection I have to my siblings. I don't really have a connection to my siblings. Sure. And my wife and I were joking around about how one day when my mother passes away, I'm not in a rush, believe me. She's the one family member I really, really like. That we should change our last name and just kind of disappear into the world.
Yeah,
it was just a joking conversation. But my wife was like, what would you change your last name to? Like, if you were not going to be.
See, that's the trick. What would it be?
And immediately, the first thing came out of my mouth was Blackbeard.
Well, that makes sense. But was your wife on board with that one?
And my wife was like, "That's great." She's like, "I'll be Blackbeard."
All right. Well, then you're set.
And then my son and my daughter were like, "Yeah, like Blackbeard's awesome."
Well, you lucked out. You hit it on the first try. Why not?
But that's exact. But it sets off that.
You know what the problem for
that
would be, right? The problem for that would be Social Security card, driver's license. It would be all the shit attached.
I know. You got to change everything. But what I'm saying is, it set off that asshole thing where in my head I was like, yeah, but of course you're going to give yourself a cool last name because nobody wants the last name, like Gorpdick, right?
Well, right. But to me, I'm like, why is that bad? Why should anybody have a shitty name?
I know, and that's what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to change the way I think, so I'm not so brutal. I accept that we, things can be, listen. Tomorrow, a meteor could hit Earth and fucking vaporize us. Right. The least we can do, just like you said, is make it a better, more humane place.
That's what I'm saying.
Support each other, allow people to be stupid, make mistakes, right? And if you want to be a Gorpdick, you know what?
Yeah, be a Gorpdick.
You can be a Gorpdick. Yeah.
Be a Gorpdick.
But I just thought it would be really cool to be a Blackbeard. That'd be fun. But my beard's not black anymore, so I.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, look, you think? Well, actually, Blackbeard died pretty young, right? So he probably was. But I was gonna say Blackbeard's beard probably wasn't black at the end. So
yeah,
who cares? Yeah.
So you were going to say something about getting old, weren't you?
Oh yeah, yes. Lando was asking my age before the show, and I said, "Oh, have you not?" I said at 45 they've changed some things. So now I don't know if it's like this everywhere.
Yeah.
In California.
Yes.
Now they post this little thing in the doctor's office, and as far as I understand, it's universal because I've seen men and women on it. Okay. But essentially, it's stages of life now, where they basically kind of tell you at different intersections like what to expect and what tests you're going to have, and the things you got to watch out for. And it's hysterical because I think it's 0 to 25.
Remember, don't let them define your reality.
No. Well, this is medical. This is science. This isn't.
No. Okay, hold on. There's always outliers, and that's the thing to remember. Is they're giving you averages. Of course there are,
but what they're saying is yes, you have to watch out for high blood pressure. That's not outliers.
I know, but my problem with medical science is that they tell you what's wrong with you, right? But then they don't give you any other way to do things. Like you got high cholesterol, take a pill.
Really
and you're
like,
I don't want to take a pill. Is there another way to fix this?
No. This wasn't really that.
Okay.
This was more of you're going to get these tests because this is what you're at risk for. It's kind of that.
Because I switched doctors recently because I moved, right?
Yeah.
And I went to my doctor and he was like, "Have you had a tetanus shot?" And I was like, "No, I should probably get it." He's like, "You want to get it today?" And I was not in the mood to get it that day because I had other shit going on. I was like, "No, I'll get it. I'll get it when I come for my physical." And then you know what he did? He proceeded to show me photos of people with tetanus.
Wow.
To try and shock and awe me.
Yeah, they shouldn't do that.
So you know what I did? I was like, shit, dude, you want to see photos of something really bad? And I went shock and awe on him. At which point, he's not my doctor anymore.
I was going to say, that's not a doctor type I've ever had.
My
doctor doesn't do stuff like that unless you say no. And he's like, let me tell you why you don't want to say no.
It's such bullshit, that reaction. Like, I'm not saying no, I just don't want to do it today.
That's your reaction, which is, I'm getting a new doctor, was the correct one. That's the correct reaction. Is I need a new doctor now.
I am all for medical science, but don't fucking guilt me into shit with your bullshit
No. This isn't that.
Yeah.
This is basically telling them why they're testing and checking certain things and what they're watching for, which is perfectly fine. So it's like 0 to 25 is your basic inoculations, sexually transmitted diseases, the stuff because you're a stupid teenager. It's normal shit, but it's basically, but outside of that, it's like, you know what, if you want to eat Tupperware every day, you'll probably be fine. Don't worry about it. 0 to 25.
Yes.
That's like 25 to 45 is okay. Staying current on boosters and, making sure that there's no weird vitamin deficiencies, 25 to 45. But still it's like, okay, you can only eat Tupperware once a week now because it's going to start putting on pounds, so be careful.
Yeah.
So monitor your diet and exercise, blah, blah. And then you get to 45 to 65. And that's where it's like, well, it's the beginning of the end now. So we're going to start testing you for everything because cancer is right around the corner, and you could just randomly wake up and your asshole could fall out and stuff like. It's like a fucking horror show. And then 65 and over is just like make out a will. Good luck. There's nothing else.
So I'll tell you my alternate view of all this. I knew about all this aging stuff because I'm very into fitness, as you know, and when you hit your 40s is when your body starts trying to actively fall apart. Right? So you have to work out smart rather than hard, right? But also, speaking as somebody who has had 2 random major blood-based illnesses that nearly killed him, not to mention some other weird scares along the way, I kind of take this mentality of your body could always fall apart. Most people just didn't realize.
Oh, no. I agree. It's just funny because it didn't used to be in a really colorful poster that way.
No,
it's smiling people the whole way, even though they're talking about horror.
They're trying to make it very sort of like, look, they're trying to Happy Meal it. But
I honestly think it's because people keep saying, I don't need these tests. What do I need these tests for? And now they're like, you know what? Here's a pamphlet that you can look at.
And the reality is everybody gets to die the way they want to die, right? If you don't want to take care of yourself and you want to fall apart, you got that option.
Yeah, the biggest health scare I ever had was I think,
my
19
siblings,
when I got an infected toenail and I got blood poisoning and didn't pay attention to it for 3 days. And they were like, moron, your blood is calcifying in your body.
When I was in elementary school, I had a blood platelet issue where my body stopped healing. I was in the hospital for almost a month when they were doing all this like blood therapy and the thing was like, because my parents were both full-time working parents with 2 other kids, I spent a lot of time alone in a hospital. Let me tell you, spending a lot of time when you're in like 3rd grade alone in a hospital with being told that you can't fall, you can't hit, you can't get a cut because you could bleed to death.
Right.
It puts a really fine perspective on your vision of health and the fragile nature of life.
Yeah.
Maybe that's colored the way I see things.
Well,
but the way I assumed that we were always pretty killable,
Yeah, I don't want to make this out like it's a scare tactic. It's just funny because it's spelled out in these slices, and it's very funny. But the thing
is, if you want to be healthy, we do live in an age where there's a lot of, we'll call them conveniences.
Well, and I think that's what they're trying to
point
point across is that, yes, there's lots of things we can't account for, but these tests are made to try to catch this stuff early so you survive, and that's
when you're
fine.
younger. When you're younger, you can be healthy with very little work.
By default, most times.
Yeah. When you get older, you got to put some work into it. You can be, if you want to be limber, you got to stretch and do some yoga. You want to be strong, you better hit those weights. When you were younger, you didn't need this stuff. When you get older, you have to want it. And I think that's what's fascinating about getting older is that you have to want it and you have to do the work. And if you don't, then your body will fall apart and you will, you'll die more quickly. My mom is in her 80s and she's still a marathon runner. My father was almost 90 when he died. And let me tell you, you met my dad. He was not the type to stop. He had COVID. COVID itself didn't kill my father. It was like the 4 other things. The man had open heart surgery when he was in his fucking 80s. And the part of that he hated the most was not the open heart surgery or that shit. It was the part where like he couldn't get up from bed and he had to use a bedpan and he was like, I hate this. This is the worst thing. But the man started having a heart attack. he was visiting people in Florida, and this is before COVID. He was having a heart attack, and he was like, I'm not dying in Florida. And he got on a plane and flew back to Jersey so he could fucking go to doctors and potentially die up here. You know, so it's like, I take this mindset with health and body that you just got to keep going. There's science, right? But I've come to realize there's a lot we don't know about the body, especially the mind-body connection. Did I tell you recently they discovered that in your brain there is a cell in your brain that does shit they never realized. Like it almost what was it? It almost behaves like a neuron. Mm-hmm. And they were like, shit, we never knew it did this. And I'm sitting there going, how the hell can people even be sitting here going, one day they're going to upload my brain to the web? And you're like, they don't even fucking understand the way this shit works properly. There is so much mystery to the body. And that's why people, like, they have this thing where they're like, well, we've discovered so much. What's left to discover? Everything is left to discover. Technology, science, it's not moving fast enough as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, sure, there's a new fucking PlayStation every couple of years, and the computers are getting faster, but we still don't understand how the body works. A lot of our stuff is based off, only so much science. And we're living in this age where scientists are beginning to be sort of kind of shunned. I mean, and I know in this country, there's a whole party that's dedicated itself to being anti-science. I love science, but don't think for a second that we know enough. We'll never know enough, and we need to know more. And especially with health. Dude, I'm not convinced that these bodies weren't made to go longer. I'm not convinced that to some degree we're using them wrong. It's kind of like getting a really nice car, right? And then never changing the oil and never getting the engine checked, and and then having the thing crap out after a couple of years and being like, I don't understand why my car's dead. And you're like, well, if you don't know how to take care of it, then it's not going to last. No matter how you drive it, you have to know how to take care of it. And I just don't think we know yet how to take care of these things, these vessels. But there's hope. People are still exploring. People are still doing research, and my mother's is 80 and she's still going strong, and she's a vegetarian runner, but we know what, she smoked till she was in her 30s, and when she was in her 20s she drank like a fish, and she was a painter. So who knows how it works. I mean, the mind-body connection is not to be ignored, and it throws science off a bit, because this is the whole placebo effect, right? Where it's like, why is it that if you take a killer bee and you put it with honeybees, it'll become a honeybee? If you put a honeybee with killer bees, it'll become a killer bee. You're like, well, shit. That says to me that there's more going on here than meets the eye. There's a Hasbro toy reference for you. And it's like, yeah, we were saying earlier about how you can still be amazed and perplexed and be so enthusiastic about new art and new artists that I feel the same way about science. And I think that anybody who don't think we know it all. Yeah. We don't know it all. Yeah. But we're always looking for more, and I think that's great. Sure. And I know that in my vision of an ideal society, science plays very heavily into it. But not just hard science. I think the thing is, that whole idea, anything can become anything can be ruined by zealotry.
Of course.
Right? And science is no stranger to that either, because there's people who sit there and be like, oh, you got the hard science and it's this. And it's like, yeah, but there's constantly new science. So you can never say anything is for sure. There was a time that
is bound by is defined by the boundaries of knowledge.
Yeah, and you have to allow that what you may know today.
We can find second gravity tomorrow. which could redefine gravity.
Second gravity. I love
Could.
that. You could find second gravity.
Yeah,
how would that
gravity.
even work?
Well, you could find that different gravity in the same way that time exists differently depending on spatial variance. You could find that gravity. I mean, it sort of does. That's what
I tried to
explain.
I tried to explain that concept to my kids. The whole like black hole time space variation. Where like and that like blew their minds. Where they were like, "Jesus Christ, I mean, time flows differently." And I'm like, "Well, I said I always try to add theoretically."
As far as we know, that's what. Yeah.
As far as we know, but we don't. We also don't have a black hole at hand, which is good thing. But I always try to leave the door open for the fact that there's so much we don't know. Yep. And because I was reading something recently where they had a photograph of the spaceship going to the moon, like the first launch, and then they have a picture of the Wright brothers, and they were like, "Do you realize that there's only what is it, 60 years? Is it 60 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so something like that, like the first flight to going to the moon, right? And they're like, "Oh, technology is so is evolving so quickly," and it's like, yeah, it is, but it's not moving as quick as you think, and the technology, like we are constantly improving, but there's so much we don't know, and there's so much that we don't even know we don't know. I think I love that phrase, the whole "you don't know what you don't know." There's some like some of this stuff is now at such a point that like I marvel at some of these scientists and the level to which they're functioning to be able to understand some of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like you get these people who focus their entire lives on like these minuscule reactions in the brain. You know what I mean? It's baffling. And I hope that there's still lots of people like that out there that are entertained and interested by that. I was talking to my wife about how Star Trek is so important because so many people were inspired by Star Trek to get into science and to get into NASA and to invent things. I mean, Jesus Christ, you could pull out your phone and FaceTime somebody.
Sure.
Kirk didn't even have that shit. He had to put it on the view screen on the ship, right? But it's like there's, I think it was the guy who created the flip phone said that there was a part of him that really wanted to have the communicator from Kirk, that something you just flip open,
Yeah.
So it's like this is where fiction comes in to help push science, right? Where people dream and imagine, and then science tries to catch up. Which, honestly, that's good that we ended up here because I had a question for you that I wanted to ask you, which shouldn't be a big conversation. I think it's a short one, but nonetheless. So I was watching recently the episode of Stranger Worlds where it's a crossover between Lower Decks and
the animated one,
which is fantastic. It was a hilarious episode to watch. I thought they did some very interesting things with time travel and how scary time travel can be, especially when you have irresponsible people involved. But I realized that episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes. And I was like, holy shit, that guy's everywhere. And I thought to myself, you know what? Is Jonathan Frakes more important to Star Trek than Patrick Stewart?
Mm-hmm.
Because Patrick Stewart is like, he's for the longest time he was the poster boy, right? Fucking Picard, right?
Yeah.
But Frakes directed like a bunch of the movies, a bunch of the episodes. He's still directing. He made it into Picard. He's in Lower Decks. I mean, like, is Frakes the true poster child or the poster boy of Star Trek?
Well, the difficult thing is, I think it's a chicken and an egg type of scenario, and I'll tell you why.
Well, you need Picard to get Riker, right?
Well, that's the thing. I looked this up in preparation because I was curious. I didn't know if Jonathan Frakes had any type of directing or any experience prior to Next
Just so
Gen.
we're clear, I asked Joe this question when we were playing video games the other night, and then both of us stopped and we were like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's
when
talk
I
about
said
this during the
I
show.
said I don't think there's a single answer, that's when we're like, all right.
Yeah.
So Frakes did no directing or anything behind the camera that I can find prior to Next Gen. He was an actor, so he had done acting. He had done, believe it or not, he had dressed up for Marvel Comics as Captain America. So
I sent you that picture.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's. But as far as I can tell, he didn't do anything. That doesn't mean he wasn't interested. It doesn't mean he didn't whatever. But Next Gen is where he got to sit in on all the production stuff and really start to learn directing and see how things were produced and all the rest of it. And I would say that as far as Next Gen success, Patrick Stewart, from what I have read, was a large part of the reason why it was done in the manner it was done. He was very much of the, we're not going to fool around. This isn't a joke. We need to make the best thing we can make, which, didn't exactly sit well with people at first, I'm sure. He appeared to be a bit looking down his nose at certain people, but look at his background. You can understand why. If you have a bunch of people that are goofing off that are new actors and you're a Shakespearean, trained whatever, you're typically going to be, it doesn't sound like he was ever Shatner level asshole, but certainly he could be a bit, you kids don't know what you're doing to people. But I think that part of that is why the show, his portrayal is central to the success of that show. There is a reason why many people point to that character as the perfect example of the modern Star Trek captain, that he's held to that. And much of that is, the writing is, I'm not saying it's all Patrick Stewart. It isn't. The writing is what informs the actor, but the actor also has to be able to deliver that material in a way that feels like it is authentic.
And the thing is, after the first season, after there's a first season, there's a feedback loop, because the writers start seeing their creation. Correct. And they start writing it for the persona.
Yes.
And then and so it just ends up feeding itself.
But Patrick Stewart was Picard from the jump. But
after
was there.
But after he held it like that, everything it just became more Picard. You know
what I mean? But in other words,
easier.
there are actors and characters that change and become better over the course of it. You see that with some characters. In fact, you could say Riker is vastly different after a couple of seasons. There is a reason that the beard correlates with how good he is.
Once the beard comes in, it's a whole other kind of Riker, yeah.
Yeah, and Michael Dorn's Worf is very different. There are, but Picard
once they got rid of
the
tight pants. Although I will say Picard was good tight pants and not tight pants. But yes, for some reason, a lot of the characters seem to change a little bit. They almost get more comfortable when they lost the tight pants.
The only two that are for all intents and purposes the same in the last season as the first, if you look at the first episode right there, is Picard and Q. Those two characters are locked, and they don't change. The rest of them, some of them are closer than others. Like Data is actually quite different if you watch him in the first couple seasons to where he becomes later. Especially in the first season, he can have some weird episodes where you can see that they're saying, okay, do a little more emotion. No, do less.
Yeah, and the argument is also that the character was actively trying to evolve. So,
sure, you could make that argument.
There's an argument to be made, yeah.
Yeah, but they kind of realized that they needed to play him a certain way, and then he stuck to that until they put the emotion chip in. So that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is, Picard and Q, when you watch the first episode, they're there. Those are the same characters. There's nothing different. Not nothing, but those characters are fundamentally the same for the whole series. You don't see any waffling there. Whereas some of the other ones in that first season are a little rickety. Again, I don't care. I still watch it, and there's bad writing too. But if that steadiness is what the rest of the show anchored to, and Frakes got his production and direction, the ability to direct and start doing things from there and has carried it onward.
I totally agree with you in the chicken and egg man. I'm not saying that you don't. I'm not saying that you don't need Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart was more important at the beginning of Next Gen. Frakes is more important now.
Okay,
but the reason for that is because they intersected.
That's the straight answer. There you go.
Yeah.
So Frakes. Yeah. So as far as you're concerned, Frakes is more important now.
Now, oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Because he's fucking everywhere. That's just it. It was so.
Don't get me wrong.
To me,
it is a testament to Patrick Stewart that people stuck with him past those two awful Picard things and let them take a crack at a third.
Oh Jesus!
Because if I had been the exec watching the first one, I would have been like, "Yeah, we're done with that. Thanks. Yeah. Well, we'll do a TV movie and wrap your ass up because this sucks shit. Bye."
No, and season 3 was just so good.
Right. So. They obviously understood
season 3 was good enough that I was willing to I'm willing to watch. I want more now with the Titan.
And I believe
Titan
that
Now
the
Enterprise.
reason that there was a third season is because people said we cannot let this character end on the second season's ending. This is not good. We'd rather regress back to TNG and do something that's pure fan service, so at least they still like him, than leave it here. That is very powerful. Not a lot of characters command that. And that goes back to Patrick Stewart. So, yes, it's a synergy where one was more fundamental to, because again, people forget when TNG came out, most people who were fans of the original wanted it to fail. They thought it was an abomination. Oh yes. Oh man, we have short memories.
I never had that reaction. I loved that there was Star Trek.
But I know for me, I didn't grow up on the original series the way that the hardcore people did.
Yeah.
I've never had that attachment to the original series. It was cutesy, and I watched the animated one because I was a kid. But did I really love it that way? Did I define my nerd personality around it? No. So when Next Gen came around, I didn't. I'm telling you, people, if you go back and read about what was going on at the time, it's fascinating because people were like, "This is not Star Trek." The same shit you hear now from fucking people about this isn't Star Trek. The same bullshit was getting thrown around when they started showing images of Next Gen and what it was going to be, and people went, "What? What the fuck is that ship? That's not the Enterprise. And what's a bald captain? No. How can a bald captain get women? This can't be." It's like they had so grafted. I'm serious. People had it was like remember when Daniel Craig was cast as Bond, people said a blonde Bond? Fuck that. It'll never work.
You know what? This is going back to what I was talking about.
Jackman Wolverine. Can't work. Tall Australian. Fuck you. No way.
I know. And listen. On the Jackman thing, I stand by my line. He is not the comic book Wolverine. He's a great Wolverine, but he's not the comic book Wolverine.
I will not stand by my line because I remember telling somebody, you watch, this is the death of that movie. It'll never go anywhere.
I mean, and listen, the Wolverine movie, the Wolverine Origins, was an awful movie.
No, I'm talking about the first X-Men. I said this X-Men movie is doomed. There's no way this will continue. I remember saying that to somebody because I said, if this is their casting, this movie's fucked. It's not going anywhere. So much for a Marvel movie. That's it. And I'm an idiot, so
yeah.
And I was.
I like the Jackman Wolverine. I didn't know if it was going to work, but he's definitely not the comic Wolverine, and I'll stand by that still.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we haven't had a comic Batman either, really, or not.
No, not really. Batman, no, so. No. And I've said that before. I mean, I cited the fact that Bale's Batman is the ninja Batman.
But what you're talking about is a version of the character. You're not talking about the fact that the actor couldn't do the role, which is what I was saying. I was the asshole. Yeah, it's a version you were just you want your version of it. That's all.
Yeah, which will never happen, and I accept that.
I wouldn't say never. I don't know anymore. After seeing the Logan movie come out, which is a movie where they killed brutally two of the main, to have Professor X be degenerating into madness. I mean, I don't think I ever would have called that they would let that movie be made like that. That is
I'm surprised they let the movie be made. Yeah,
depressing, nihilistic film. I mean, it is nearly hopeless.
I know, but the whole
would I have ever predicted that? No.
His sacrifice goes on with his.
I understand, but that's why when you say they'll never make it, don't say that. Yeah. They've made weirder things out of these characters.
I watched Love and Thunder the other day, and I realized that there's a lot of people that are like, "Oh, Love and Thunder is not a good Thor movie." There's a lot of people who've turned down that movie. I love Love and Thunder, and I love it more when I rewatch it because this idea that, the ending for me is what gets me. Is that when Bale gets the opportunity to destroy things, in the end he just brings his daughter back. And it's like I love that idea that that last act of I guess it's a parent thing. You know what I mean? Either way,
Listen, we all key in on different things. I just watched Starman today, and the part where he brings the deer back had me next to tears. I didn't care at the end when they were...
Did you forget that part?
I did. I haven't seen Starman in probably 20 years. I really haven't. It's not a movie I sit down and watch.
You know what? This is a great seg. We're going to talk briefly about Baldur's Gate because I know Joe's got some good reviews. But we should totally talk about Baldur's Gate because talking about queuing in on different things. I don't know. to what degree you are recording the number of times that we reload the game.
Oh, I leave them in. You
leave them in? Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care.
Because there was a thing in there where we were trying to get a dog to go to our camp.
Yeah, I've got that.
And you were like, we're not fucking up this roll.
Yeah.
You're like, we're bringing him back with us.
I believe the title of that video is "We're Getting That Dog." I think that's the one. Yeah.
So it's interesting, like, you know, we both acknowledge the things that we queue up on.
Oh yeah, and in that video, you hear me say, "Okay, you cannot tell him his owner is dead, or we won't get him." Yeah, yeah. You can hear the urgency where I'm like, "Stop!" I think I said, "Stop." You can't.
So that said, I just wanted to quickly hit on the fact that we are now into. I think we're well into the beginning of Baldur's Gate because
we're well into the very beginning.
Yeah, we're well into the beginning section of the game, and we've had our ass kicked hard,
a
lot, but we're beginning to get to that point where we're pulling off some things that surprise even me. I know that last night we pulled off a.
Well, this is the best. The best thing is exactly what we knew was going to happen. We got really lucky in the positioning where the characters ended up, not by intention. Yeah. I had about 18 different ideas. None of them worked, but we happened to be in the right spot.
And how great is that to have a game where you're actually sitting there going, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, I agree. This is why I wanted to play this game. I was dead set on it the whole time. I'm like, we're playing this game, man.
How am I going to position it? And all these things that can affect how a battle plays out. It's just so funny. And the random shit that pops up in that game.
Yeah, the devil that just comes out of nowhere.
No, the troll and the orc fucking in the barn.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
That I just walked. Like Joe was in the fight at that point. And I walked into this barn because I heard a noise, and I just walked into these two doggy styling it, and I was like, the look of shock. I will say this. I really enjoy the expressions on the characters' faces because my character always looks. We've jokingly called her Sad Eeyore. Because she's always looks very sad and glum. Yeah, but then every now and then something happens and the look of shock on her face is so priceless. I think your character has more of a range of expression. I don't know if it's like if it's an elf to tiefling thing. But yeah, I was shocked as hell when I walked. And I felt so bad that you weren't with me. Because you kind of knew it was going when you walked in there. But I would have loved to have you with me and walk in there and be like, what the hell is this? Yeah. So, yes, we're well into the beginning. We're beginning not to get our ass kicked, although I'm sure there will be many wipes.
Oh, there will.
But it is still very good.
Yes. And I think the more powerful we become, the more fun it's going to be.
Well, the less we get our asses kicked,
we've gotten our asses kicked, and it hasn't stopped being fun. We just find new places to go.
I will say this: there's one fight in the game that we wiped like a bunch of times, and by like the 7th time, I think we did it 7 times. I was like, I'm done. Fuck this guy.
Which now that fight, I'm wondering if we can do it.
Oh yeah, it's because I have a horn of Jericho.
Because we have the orc pack. So
are they orc or trolls?
Are those trolls? Whatever. Sure. I don't care.
Hey, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I have a horn that when I blow it, these 3 giant, fat troll.
I don't know. They're Jersey Shore beef stone men. I don't
know.
Whatever,
my god! That would work. It's like they're Jersey boys. Yeah.
Yeah, they sure are. Like, hey, what do you need, bud? What do you need, bud?
Hey, what do you need? And they smash the hell out of everything. Yeah. So, so there's weird things in that game that pop up because that was a chance. Everything.
It was.
I do like the way they have found a way to make the game feel like life, in that there's so many chance encounters.
Weird random stuff.
If you didn't walk into this room, if you didn't cross and go over there, like you wouldn't meet these people and have these things happen.
Yeah.
So. Yep. That's all I wanted to say about it. It's still entertaining as hell. So, yeah.
I'll talk briefly. Speaking of video games, since we're talking about it, I finished Prey from 2017.
Oh yeah.
Let me tell you something. Great game. Great game that you would have a lot of fun with if you had the time for it, which I know you don't. But it is.
Yeah, I need like 10 hours extra in my day. I need 34-hour days is really what I need.
Well, I will just say to anybody who may never have played it like I didn't, because all I can think is that I read bad reviews and trusted them when I shouldn't have, because I had the impression this game was awful.
Yeah, or there was something else that came out at the same time. I mean, did you ever look to see?
No, I don't think it's that.
Else?
I don't think it's that. I remember reading reviews that said this game wasn't good. I remember it because I had, it wasn't that something else was out. It was that I had a negative impression of the game somehow. And I don't even remember what the reviews were, but I remember reading something about them and I went, nope, this game isn't for me. And yeah, or it could just be that my taste changed. Look, I never would have played certainly Baldur's Gate or Wasteland 3 if I hadn't played Wasteland 2. And I only did that because I kickstarted it, not really realizing what kind of game it was. And then I'm like, well, I fucking paid for it, so I'm going to play it. God damn it.
There was an RPG on Super Nintendo, I think.
Huh?
Do you remember with the dragon people and the dragons? And you had like, it was very much like a low level RPG. And I remember, and that game stuck with me because I ended up loving that game. It was so hard to learn.
I mean, all I ever played of RPGs was Final Fantasy.
Hold on.
So unless it was that.
Yeah, there's that. It was more Dungeons and Dragons. Let's see.
There were a lot of RPGs on the Super Nintendo in particular. So it could have been a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably games that are actually called Dragon something.
I'm sure there is. Yeah, Chrono Trigger, sir.
Yeah,
go on.
Yeah. So Prey is exceptionally good, and in a similar way to Baldur's Gate, but Baldur's Gate is obviously on a much bigger scale. Prey takes account of what you're doing. Your decisions actually matter in the ending. Now, I don't know how many endings Baldur's Gate 3 has. Prey, as far as I can tell, has 3. But essentially, you wake up. So I'm spoiling this for everybody who hasn't played it. But so if you want to skip this, you can skip this. You wake up on a space station, and your memory's shot, and you don't know what's going on, but there's alien things all over the place, and it seems like half the station is dead bodies. At which point you very rapidly start getting calls from your brother, who is voiced by Benedict Wong. Is that his actual name? The guy who plays... Hold on. Is it Benedict? I don't want to get his wrong name. Yes, Benedict Wong. That's correct. I had it right. He was in Doctor Strange. He was in
the Sorcerer Supreme?
Yeah, his friend, the guy at Kamatage.
He's the Sorcerer Supreme. He's the current. He's the main guy now.
What's his name? What's his actual name in the? I
think his name is Wong.
Is it? Okay, all right. Well, then I won't feel as bad. Is that what it is?
I think it is.
We should make sure of that. Let's see.
Oh man.
Okay, here it is. Doctor Strange. Wong. No, it is. Okay, good.
So
all
right. Yeah, because I always thought that was very funny that his name is Benedict Wong.
Yeah, great voice.
There you go.
So he's voicing your brother, and basically he's telling you one version of things. Then you get contacted by a robot with your voice, who tells you, no, I'm you. You recorded me, and you told me this. And then you get contacted by another robot that's like, no, this is me. This is you, but from a later time, and this is what you told me. And you have to start trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And so basically there's the main story. And as the main story is going on, it allows you to either play good or evil, to a degree. Because there's a point where suddenly you can upgrade yourself with alien powers. And so for a certain point, if you don't do that, or you upgrade only a few of them, the machine systems of the station ignore you. They're defending you. But then if you install too many, they start to register you as an alien, and they start firing on you. But you get great powers. Like you get this mind blast that does a lot of damage, which you almost have to have unless you're really going to stock up on shotgun shells. Because, man, there's some brutal encounters. But anyway, you get to the end of the game, and you can make one of two fundamental decisions. One is...
I just sent you the link, by the way. It's Dragon View to the game I played.
Yeah, Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo had a lot of good RPGs.
That was the first RPG I really played.
No, there's a lot of
gave me my love.
There's a lot of good ones. A lot of ones that
I just wanted to send it to you so you had it there. All right, go on.
Dragon View. So you get to the end of the game, and essentially you have to make a decision on whether you're going to incinerate the entire station with everybody on board, or you're going to try to save them and incinerate the aliens. And if you incinerate the station, everybody on it, or you decide... So those two decisions... Well, actually, technically, there's a point where you cannot just escape and say, fuck everybody, and you just leave on your own, and that also triggers an ending. So there's really 3 possible endings. But if you leave the station, you get a very brief thing where you hear somebody saying, nope, that didn't work, reset him. But you don't know what it is. So that wouldn't really tell you what's going on. But then when you get to the end, depending on whether you incinerate the station or whether you save everybody, if you incinerate the station, I believe you also get the reset, but I think it's longer. But I didn't do that. I decided to try to save everybody, and I basically annihilated the alien infestation. So you end it. They say, yay, we're going to escape, and the aliens have been defeated. Da, 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 da. And then the credits roll. And then after the credits, so if you leave at that point, you miss this. You then wake up, and you're in a room. In fact, a very similar room to where you start the game before everything goes haywire. They're doing tests on you, and your reactions are throwing them off, and you don't know why. And then standing there is your brother, the Benedict Wong character, and 4 basically floating machines that have people talking through them. And what you find out is the entire game has been an empathy test, the whole game. Because you are a fusion of one of these alien life forms and the person that you think you are. And in the game, the thing you were trying to stop was the alien getting to Earth, the alien scenario. Okay, it's on the station. If it gets on a shuttle or, at one point you find out they blew up a shuttle to stop it from going to Earth because they didn't want the thing to get there because it can mimic life forms, so you would never find it. And so that was the big idea. So that's why what I did was I incinerated the alien because we weren't convinced that we couldn't stop it from infesting all of Earth, right? So that's what I chose as the ending, as opposed to just blowing the station up. So they're all standing there, and they recount all these little decisions that you made as a way of judging your empathy. And if you fail enough of those tests, they just outright kill you. That's it. You have nothing else you can do. You're just dead. But I didn't know that specifically, but I always try to save as many people as I can. I try not to kill human beings. In fact, I didn't realize this. I only in the entire game killed 1 person. Now, I killed the alien life forms because I had to. Although I didn't realize for a while that you could actually put them to sleep. But, God, that would be so hard. I mean, I might do it. I might do a run where I try it, but, God, it's going to be impossible. But anyway, I had spared as many people. I saved a couple of people who were going to die of oxygen deprivation that were stuck out in space, all this different shit. And so they get to the end and they're like, okay, well, we're not sure that you are empathetic, but let's show you something. And so then your brother shows you that the Earth has been infested, is in fact completely overrun with aliens. So you're on the station, Earth is lost. The aliens are everywhere. And your brother tells you, we thought that we could make, what was it? We couldn't become enough like you for your species or whatever to let us live. But maybe if we can put our empathy into you, we can figure out how to coexist. And so then you have the decision. Even at that point, you can just kill everybody and join the aliens and take over the Earth and blow it up, which I didn't do, obviously. Or you can join them. And the idea is that now you understand what human empathy is. And so that will build a bridge between the aliens and the humans. I mean, it's, and you don't know for sure it works, but that's where the game ends.
That is some high concept shit, I'll tell you that.
It's fucking great. It's great because there are certain key things, which, like I said, I was going to try to save everybody anyway, but I didn't have to. And you hear them say, well, he brought me my medicine when I was collapsing and it was tough for him to get it. He didn't have to do that. That must demonstrate some empathy, right? And, there's all this little stuff, and you realize there is some kind of tally. I don't know what the marker is, but that if you failed
it was watching you the whole time.
Yep, exactly. So great game. Great game. Plus a fun sandbox game where it doesn't tell you how to play. It's just like, here's the station. You can do whatever you want inside the station. Here's your objective. You figure it out. And you really can just do whatever. I only realized that I could knock people out with one of the guns because I kept failing this one objective to keep this guy alive. And I'm like, how am I supposed to keep him alive? Because I thought maybe I could hit him with the wrench and he would just collapse. Well, I killed him. And then I shot him with a gun that I thought would just stun him. Well, his fucking head exploded. And then I realized that the gun that I had, when you pick it up, the way it tells you is that you can use it on robots. But it's a shotgun. So if you charge it up and shoot a human, they collapse. It's a taser. It just never occurred to me to use it that way. But it makes sense. I just never tried it. So I had gooped him up because there's a goop gun that you use for moving, but he was still conscious. And then I thought maybe I'll goop his face, but I'm pretty sure that would have killed him because then he would have asphyxiated. So, anyway, great game. So that's all I want to say about that because it is a really good game. So if you for whatever reason didn't play it like I didn't,
I just love the fact that it actually keeps track of what you're doing the whole game.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no.
So if you're a monster, then it's like, okay.
Yeah,
you're gonna die in the end.
Yeah, then they will end up just killing you. Like I said, I don't know what that. I don't know what the terminus is for that, but I know it exists. So, yeah, like I said, you would probably enjoy it a lot if you had the time to play it, because it's probably about a 20-hour game.
Like I said, I need 10 more hours a day.
Yeah.
Ooh, a rare moment of silence. Look at that.
I had to get a drink of water. My throat was dry. Sorry.
There was a rare moment.
I didn't want to be like on the mic, so I had to lean away.
I learned that lesson. I don't eat popcorn anymore. I'm recording.
Well, I'm about to jump into a movie review, which I know I'm going to go on about because this movie was so great that I really want to talk about it.
You need to get that concoction that, what's his name? Fucking Gollum was drinking during Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, if only I could.
That goop he drank to make his throat nice and like.
Yeah, if only. I'll have to find out what it is. I'm sure. I have no doubt opera singers drink something. So there is some, but it probably tastes like stale bird shit or something.
I think
it's probably terrible.
Andy Serkis said it wasn't good.
Yeah, I'm sure. I could probably hold my nose and I wouldn't really notice it, but
Yeah, it's like a mixture of like it's got to be some kind of oil or something like that, plus other things. Yeah.
So there are any number of movies that I have on a list, and they're movies that are not urgent, nor are they movies where I don't think I'll ever get to them. They're in a middle ground, and in that middle ground, it's usually, and it was the case here. Usually what happens is I will read something that will spark my interest in watching whatever that thing is. And so it was with a movie. Oh, that sounds so pretentious. And so it was.
So it was that Giuseppe came to the land of thus movie.
Right. That's pretty much it. I was reading some article, and it referenced it was talking about Hammer movies, Hammer horror films, which I love. And it referenced a movie that I've had on a list called, and this is the actual title, it is called The Asphyx. Now, the asphyx is from the Greek of asphyxiation. It's actually,
yes,
I believe it is
I was really hoping that that's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it is. And I believe it is some kind of, I think the concept of the creature is somewhat based in a real whatever, like a myth or whatever. But anyway, so this movie is, it's from 1972, but it feels like a late 50s, early 60s movie in the way that it is made. It feels like a very classic British horror film. You know, one of these ones where it's, grand people speaking in big voices about high ideas. And, like The Time Machine film. Feels like something like that, but not as slow. This movie fucking moves. Like, this movie is riveting. So, movie starts out, and the very beginning is in the modern day, which of course would be the 70s when it was made. And you hear two cars collide, and you see police officers run over to the scene of an accident, and there's two cars, and the people in the cars are both dead, and then there's somebody that's underneath the cars, and you hear the police officer yell to somebody, "Quick, get an ambulance, he's still alive," and they start pulling on the legs. Right? Then we flash back. Now, we flash back to, I believe, 1860, 1870, Victorian England times, where we meet a scientist named Hugo Cunningham, who is a member of a parapsychological society that investigates reported psychic phenomena, right? Now, our first intro to this character is this character comes home, and he has a male and female child, both who have, I believe his son is married and his daughter is getting ready to be engaged, but the boyfriend has not asked for his blessing yet, but he likes them all. And the movie very quickly establishes that he is a good person, that he is very generous, that he is very kind, even to his staff. So we get this moment very early on, and this particular moment will factor into the rest of the movie, which I didn't know at the time. I thought it was just a character setup of he is a capital G, capital B, capital P, good person, but this does establish what people think of him and how he acts. So just let's listen to this little bit here.
Oh, Mason, about your sister. I don't want you worrying about money, so refer the doctor to me.
That's very kind of you, sir. Thank you again.
Tell Miss Wheatley I'm home.
Very well, sir.
That's his butler.
Father, you're generous to a fault.
We Cunninghams have our obligations. For 500 years now, we have enjoyed enormous privileges. Privilege means power, and we must never abuse that power. We're in the midst of change, and we must ensure that change is for the best.
How do we do that? By peopling the parish with successive little Cunninghams to ferret out the mischief makers and bring about social reforms?
And why not? I'm sure you and Elizabeth will have no objection to making your contribution.
Right, exactly. So, but the idea is, yeah.
I know that you I know that you prepared me for that.
Oh yeah, no, this is high British, you know.
It's very
very much so, indeed. Right. So, like I said, though, the idea of the scene is to establish the fact that he's very generous and that he, you know, thinks that his position in society can be used to benefit everyone, and that he's kind and everybody loves him. Right. So that's the idea of it, and that is how he starts off in the movie. But this is very much a Frankenstein type of tale. So.
What is this called again?
The Asphyx, Asphyx. So the reason he's come back to his home is to announce to his children that he is engaged to this woman because his wife had died in a, I don't remember what, I think she dies of a sickness when they're very, very young. And so now he's finally found somebody else who's made him happy, and he intends to marry her. And they also very early on established that he has this fascination with photography and movies, which are still kind of like he has figured out, I think this is supposed to be like he's invented cinema, where he's like, I have figured out how to capture moving images. And this is a big deal. So he's built this elaborate camera to do it. And so while he's there, he's like, I'd like to make a movie with everybody to celebrate my engagement and that we're all here. So we're going to stage a little thing where, you know, out back of the property, there's a lake or a river. So he's like, I want you guys to get on boats, and I'm going to film you kind of coming around, and it'll be like something that we can watch in the future to celebrate this happy occasion. So the first one that he does is with his daughter and her fiance. And actually, the son might be single, now that I think about it. No, because he says Elizabeth. So, no, Elizabeth is the other daughter. So, no, the son is single. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Because that's why they're arranged the way they are. So, it's the daughter and her fiance, and he says, okay, action. And he takes film of them, and they're kind of on like a gondola type of thing. And they kind of just come across, and they go to a beach, and they get off the boat. He's like, all right, perfect. He's like, all right, now let's do one with my fiance and my son. And so they're on the boat, and he says, okay, action. And they start to come across, at which point the boat capsizes, and they both drown. So the fiance and the son die, which, you know, devastates him. But he goes and he looks at the film to just to see them one last time. Yeah.
They just can't swim in the lake.
Apparently, they kind of go past that really fast. So maybe they didn't know how to swim, or because I remember the son, the fiance dives in to try to get them, and he's like, I can't see them. It's too murky. I don't know where they are. So maybe it's a very tremendous lake, and they just both drowned, I guess. I mean, the woman is in a heavy dress, like it's a big elaborate Victorian dress.
But is he also wearing like some kind of?
Well, he's wearing a suit and everything. So maybe, I think the idea is you're not supposed to think about that too much. They just drown. Maybe people didn't know how to swim. I don't know. You know, maybe in Victorian London, people of high society don't learn how to swim in common rivers.
I need to be in the boat.
Yes. Common rivers are for the common man. I only know how to swim in Olympic swimming pools. Oh no, there's no chlorine. I'm drowning. I don't know, something. Whatever it is, they drown. And so in his grief, he is watching the film of them, and he sees this thing in the photo in the film that he's also seen in photographs he's taken of the dead. When he takes pictures of the dead, he sees this smudge, but they've ruled out that it's a photography trick or that it's a problem with the film, because he says, I built one of these cameras myself. I made sure I developed the film. I made sure there were no problems. This is something in the picture. It's basically like a spirit photo. You know, I think that's what they call them, spirit photos.
Yeah.
Right? So now he sees it on the film near his son. And now he locks onto this idea that, wait a minute, is this thing specifically showing up when people are dying, like right before they die? And so by happenstance, he makes that determination. He has a theory that the asphyx is some kind of harbinger of death, that it's this thing that appears right when someone's going to die, because now he's got the pictures, now he has the film, and the film was purely accidental. You know, it had nothing to do with the experiments. This thing still showed up. So then one of the people that I believe is in his group with him comes and says, they're going to hang this guy because they've decided to reinstate capital punishment, and there's a protest going on. So why don't you go film it? And he's like, I don't want to. I just lost my wife and son. I really don't have any interest in filming this. And the guy's like, please go film it because this is an important historical moment. You have a movie camera. I don't know anybody else who does. Go and capture this. And he's like, fine. So he goes and he brings, because of where the gallows is and everything, he brings a spotlight to illuminate what's going on. So when they go to hang the guy, he starts up the camera, he turns on the spotlight, at which point this thing gets caught in the spotlights and starts screaming, this spirit thing. And what he realizes, well, I'll play the clip, but he realizes that there might be a connection. And so he goes back after the hanging, and he goes back to his lab, and he's talking to the future son-in-law, the one who will be marrying his daughter, because he and the daughter are still alive, and they have this exchange.
I tell you, it saw me. The hanged man's aspect saw me and stopped. You saw for yourself. It seemed to be struggling.
It couldn't possibly have seen you unless it's possessed of some unearthly intelligence.
Then what explanation have you?
Well, it seems more likely it was halted by some kind of barrier.
Such as?
Well, the man didn't want to die, obviously, so perhaps he was generating some kind of resistance.
Generating?
Well, if not resistance, then...
Well, resistance could have been generated, yes, but not by a dying man.
Well, then by whom?
Not by whom. By what? The Times report speaks of some strange light. Well, they're right. It was my strange light. On the film I've just shown you, the asphyx halted. But at the precise time I was using my light booster.
I don't follow.
If I'm able to record the asphyx because of the fluid with which I sensitized my photographic material, then why shouldn't the light my booster generates determine the asphyx movements?
How is the light generated?
It's a phosphide compound. When I press the trigger, it releases accurately measured droplets of water onto these crystals, generating a brilliant beam of...
Blinding blue light.
So, your curiosity is getting the better of you after all.
Well, it was you who taught me the value of an inquiring mind. So tell me, what exactly are you up to?
Okay, so at this point, Cunningham refuses to tell him what he's been working on. And this has confirmed, we find out, Cunningham's idea that this spirit, this was an accident, but it kind of got him to where he was going anyway, which was, if you can stop this thing, whatever this thing is in the photos, and trap it, then it might be able to prevent the death of the person. So this sort of jumped him ahead to where he was already working to. Like I said, this was not, he didn't want to film this. He didn't know the light was going to do this, but he's now discovered that the light caused the thing. When he says it stopped, what he means is when you see it before the man dies, because it does, he turns the light off and the guy does get hanged. But before that, the thing kind of, it's not the best effect, but it's fine. For a movie like this, it serves its purpose. It sort of stops going towards him and swings around and looks at him in the light and seems trapped for a minute. And then when the light's off, then they hang him and the guy dies. So he's now thinking, okay, so now I can build essentially the ghost trap from Ghostbusters, except that in this case, because this thing is appearing when someone's going to die, it's actually responsible for the death. So it's a loosey-goosey kind of thing where you're like, well, wait a minute. So the thing kills him or he just happens to be around? And why would stopping that kill him? But whatever, we go with it because this is the movie. And it's a neat idea. So sure enough, he eventually reveals to the son of, Giles is his name. The guy who's going to marry his daughter is Giles. So it's basically Cunningham and Giles is most of the movie. So he shows Giles his idea. And what he does is he takes a guinea pig and he says, I'm going to poison this guinea pig. And when it dies, I'm going to keep the light on near it and see if I see the asphyx and grab it. And he's like, I want you to help me. You hold the light and I'm going to, or no, I'm sorry. He's manning the light and he tells Giles, I've built this box, which looks a lot like a coffin, but it's basically a box with a little thing on the top, like a little water thing, and then a door. And he's like, hold this door open and do as I say. And Giles is like, well, what's going to happen? He's like, just do what I say. Let's see if this works. So sure enough, the guinea pig starts to die. and he turns on his blue booster light, and the asphyx is there, and he grabs it. And man, the sound effect they use for this thing is actually disturbing, and it goes on for a while. So that's the only bad thing about this movie, is that fucking scene goes on for a while. But he essentially slowly moves the spirit to the box, and he says, okay, activate the box light. And when Giles activates that, it's slightly stronger than the booster light. So it then takes over holding the asphyx. He says, close the door. And Giles closes the door. They lock it. They have to keep that thing on the top running, but basically all they have to do is keep the water supply going, and it will keep it in there. And so then what they do is they...
so if the light ever goes out, it will escape.
The light goes out, or somebody opens the box.
Oh,
and
so if you don't open the box, there doesn't need to be a light going in there.
Well, there does. It has to be both. The light has to be supplied. So if the light goes out, it will escape, because then it just goes back into the ether. Basically, the light is holding it in. As far as I can tell, they never go into this in detail, but I inferred that the light is holding it in this plane of existence.
Yeah.
Here. And it's apparently every person has their own asphyx. So they're all individualized. So to do this on a mass scale, you would need 1,000 boxes. But essentially it proves, because then the guinea pig, which has been poisoned, they verified that it did eat the poison, now does not die. The guinea pig just stays alive. And so he says, okay. He says, now I want to test it on a person. And Giles is like, well, how are you going to do that? And he says, well, there are many people dying of tuberculosis. Let's go find somebody who's terminal, and we'll bring them here, and we'll give them a comfortable place to die. And at the moment of death, we'll capture the asphyx and try to transfer it into a larger box. And we'll see what happens. If the guy survives, then we know it worked. Even though we really tested it on the guinea pig, of course, the guinea pig isn't a person. And Giles is like, okay, but doesn't think it'll work. So they go and they find a guy who's dying of TB and is about to be thrown out in the street. And basically they give him this wonderful place. And he's like, this is wonderful. Thank you very much. Why are you doing this? He's like, we just have a theory about what's going to happen with your disease. You're terminal anyway, so we didn't think there's any harm. And he's like, okay, that's fine. He's like, just do me a favor and make sure that they don't dissect me. Because apparently, they were dissecting people to find out what was causing TB. He's like, just don't dissect me. He's like, we promise we won't dissect you. He's like, okay, fine. So sure enough, he starts to die, like a night or two later, and they're in the room when he's dying, and he's starting to really die. And so they throw the light on, and they capture the asphyx. Right. The thing is that he specifically says you have to move it very slowly, or it can escape. So where it is quite a distance from the box, and in the process of moving it, the person is alive in agony, so he's choking to death from TB as this thing is happening. And Giles is like, he's in agony. You have to let him die. And Cunningham's like, no, he'll thank me once it's in there. It's going to take a little bit, but he, in the end, if I'm right, then he will have immortality. The TB will be gone and he can live a normal life. But the guy is basically like, in agony, and takes a bottle of acid and throws it at Cunningham and hits him in the face and burns part of his face, which of course makes him swing the light wildly. And then the thing escapes and the guy dies. So he goes into the hospital, and the whole time they've kept the daughter in the dark about what's going on, because I don't really know why. I think that's supposed to be a patriarchal thing where they're like, she's a woman, she won't get it. Her brain's not big enough or something. I don't really know why they kept
her head will explode if she learns too
much. That just feels like it's a byproduct of the times, which makes sense. I'm sure that at the time, because he swears Giles to silence, and Giles is like, really? I'd like to tell her. He's like, no, you mustn't. He's like, well, if you really think it'll harm her, I won't. So I don't know what... They never get into detail on what that is, but the daughter doesn't know. So she's just seeing the two men in her life seeming to act really weird and being secretive. So she's not too thrilled about what's happening. But basically, so he's fine, more or less. He's got a burn on his face, but it's not too bad. It's not anything serious. He's just kind of scarred up. And so, he's at home, and they get him to where he wakes up. And when he wakes up, the daughter's there, and he says to her, she's like, what happened? What was going on? Because she heard the screaming. He's like, don't worry about it. It was just an experiment that got out of control. Go get Giles. And she's clearly very hurt by it, which of course she would be, because something's going on and nobody's telling her what's going on. So she's like, fine, I'll go get him. And Giles comes in, and we get this exchange, which is really good just in acting terms, but also ties back to that first clip I played about using their power to keep mankind going in the right direction. So I'll play this.
You shouldn't have removed the bandages.
It handicaps me in my work, and my work cannot wait.
Yes. You mean your real work. The true nature of your experiments.
So you have guessed.
Immortality.
Yes. You've seen for yourself that it is within my grasp. Trap a man's asphyx in that beam of light and seal it off so that it has no way of escape and you have immortal man.
I can't even begin to grasp such a concept.
Why? Because of the time it would take. The duration of a mere heartbeat. The blinking of an eye, so vast as eternity, having neither beginning, nor middle, nor end.
But why pursue immortality?
I once told Clive we are in the midst of change, and we must ensure that change is for the good of all. Well, once immortal, one could govern the course of events perpetually, and with the wisdom of each successive age and civilization.
Sir, you've lived a fine and honorable life. You have responsibilities, yes, but one of them requires you to know when to relinquish power.
Giles, I need your help. I want you to summon up my own asphyx, to trap it, and put it in the vault next to my son.
Think of the future. Imagine your grief when Christina predeceases you.
You give me an idea.
What?
You love Christina, don't you?
Yes. Should you approve, we'd like to marry.
I had expected that. Help me to immortalize myself, and I will immortalize you and Christina. Well, what do you say? Let me tempt you more. Think, man. Think of the power.
How can you be sure that nothing will go wrong?
For myself, I am prepared to take the risk. If the experiment fails and I die, then it is God's will. If I survive forever, then it is also God's will.
Right. So you can see where this is going.
I love that argument. Well, if it works,
great.
then it was meant to work. If it doesn't
Right.
work, then it wasn't meant to work. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Right. So you can see where he's starting to now get into mania, where he's starting to become obsessive about it. Because, again, he started off all good intentions and he's still kind of there, but now he's talking about, the power of immortality and all the rest of it and being willing to take risks and all that stuff. So you can see what's going to happen. So sure enough, what they do is Giles says, all right, I'll help you. Let's see if this actually works. And so they set up a thing where Cunningham gets put into an electric chair that he's controlling. And what he has to do is, so he says, I'm going to electrocute myself and keep the light running. And when you see the asphyx, put it into the box. Right? So sure enough, he's like, okay, I'll try. But the thing is, Cunningham doesn't really take into account that he's been doing this and working with this equipment for a while, and Giles really hasn't. So he starts electrocuting himself, and Giles has the thing running, but he realizes that he can't maintain the light and keep the box running at the same time. So he starts to lose it, and Cunningham starts to die. At which point his daughter, having heard all the screams, comes into the room, sees that her father is being electrocuted, and immediately thinks that Giles is trying to kill him. And he's like, slaps her in the face and says, get a hold of yourself. Get over there and throw that switch or your father will die. So she's like crying, no idea what's going on, but listens to him, goes over, runs the box, and sure enough, they manage to put his asphyx in the box and seal it. And so Giles tells her what's going on, and she doesn't believe it, which I believe is this clip of them talking to her about it. So let me play this. I'm pretty sure. Let me play this. I'll know if this is it. Hold on a minute.
What are you doing?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's after. I know what that is. So never mind. I thought I captured this later. That's the later clip. So they tell her what's going on, and she's like, I don't believe it. I think you two have become too wrapped up in what you've been doing here, and this isn't going to work. And so Giles says, okay, I'll prove it to you. He's like, just give me till tomorrow. So she goes to bed, wakes up the next day.
Hold on. If his asphyx is being captured, all he has to do is stab himself in the chest and be like, say nothing.
Well, yeah, but I think this movie probably didn't
Isn't he unkillable now?
Well, he is. Other than go for my thought was to have Giles take a gun and shoot him. But, So basically he says, okay, go to bed. Maybe because I sort of get why she's already horrified about what she's seen. Maybe they didn't want to traumatize her again by having him shoot her. I get it. So he says, you know what? We'll prove it to you tomorrow. Just go to bed. Just trust me. I'm not going to, no harm will come to your father. So she goes to bed, wakes up next day, goes in to see her father. Her father's bedroom is empty. She runs to Giles. She's panicked. He says, just come with me. So they go down, even though this is, to me, a method that relies far more on trust than what you and I just came up with, which is stab him in the eye or shoot him in the chest or whatever. So they go down into the crypt, and he opens up one of the sarcophaguses or whatever, and the father is in there, and he wakes him up, and he's like, I sealed this airtight all night. There is no way he could have survived, which, of course, what if there was a hole in the thing? Of course he could have survived, but whatever. Yeah. It's a movie. We're going along with it. And that is the proof for her that this is working. And so she says, okay, because then Cunningham, because she's like, no, I still don't want to be a part of it. And Cunningham's like, if you do this, then I will give my blessing to your marriage, but I have to be able to make you immortal first because I can't lose you. I've lost my fiance. I lost my son. I can't lose the two of you. So I have to immortalize you. Otherwise you can't get married. And because this is Victorian England and apparently they couldn't just elope, that's enough to then push her across the finish line. So she agrees. Now,
but she's not really immortal. She's got to open the door if she's done.
Well, sure. Yes, that in theory could be done. So the way that they decide to kill her is a guillotine. Now I don't really. Oh yes, I do know why. Yeah. Because what Cunningham realizes as he's doing these other things is, except this doesn't make sense with the guinea pig.
How does the head go back on?
No. It's okay. What he theorizes is that in human beings, the fear of death is what attracts it. Now, you have to say to yourself, well, then why did it go to the guinea pig? Because the guinea pig had no fear of death. It was just eating something. But again, It's a movie, and who cares? Because at this point...
And so because of that, they cut her head off and she dies.
Well, okay. So, again, I like what this movie does in terms of they don't just make it that they just kill her. What happens is he realizes that the way to ensure that what happened with him can't happen with her is he runs a constant water line to the light, the booster light, because that was what happened was when he didn't want any possibility of it shutting off, and so he wanted to be able to, he ran a constant water line, and so at this point he's going to man the booster, and Giles is going to man the box, right? So they start the experiment, and what he wants to do is the reason they're using a guillotine is he says, drop the blade, but stop it. And they test it a couple times to make sure the stop works. He's like, because she has to be afraid, which is fucking horrifying for the daughter. When you think about what's going on here, the horror of this movie is there's almost no blood, nothing, no shock scares. It is all the elements of what's going on and realizing that this poor woman is being fucking psychologically tortured by the men in her life, right? So they drop the blade and stop it. She's, of course, crying and freaking out in terror because she's going on her fiancé and father's word that this is not going to kill her. And so the asphyx appears. He throws the light on. He's got it, right? And he starts moving it, at which point you see the guinea pig comes into the room and starts chewing on the water line, right? So you already know what's going to happen. Because for a while, I'm like, how is this going to go wrong? He seems to have thought of everything. And he's moving it, and then you see the thing chewing, and sure enough, it springs a hole. All the water comes out, and the light goes off. Giles panics, loses control of the blade, and it cuts her head off and kills her. So now she's dead. So the father and fiancé have now been responsible for the death of the daughter, right? Now, so she's dead. They bury her. And then the father is in grief. The fiancé is in grief. And the Cunningham says to him, I need you to do something for me. Because before this, he had told him, go get a door that, he says, an impregnable door, which they equate to being a door with a combination lock because you can't unlock a combination lock or I guess knock the door down. But whatever, again, you're going with it because who cares? It's far too good a movie to care because the acting is so good. Who cares? So they put a door with a combination lock. And he's like, I need you to, so after the death, they meet and he says to Giles that I'm going to go down to the vault and I'm going to release my asphyx and I'm going to die because I will live in eternal torment knowing that I killed my daughter and that I was partially, because he also blames himself for the wife and the fiance dying because he wanted to film them in the boating accident. He's like, I've now been directly responsible for the death of 3 people, including 2 of my own children. I have no one left. I can't live with this. I got to go open my thing. So you've got to tell me what the combination is, because he told Giles to take the combination, write it down, and hide it, so that, if he ever needed it, he knew where it was, but he didn't want to know it, just in case he ever got into a moment of distress or whatever. But he was so confident in what he was going to do that he thought he would never have to use it. So Giles says, okay, but first you have to make me immortal, and that leads to this scene. So I'll just play this so you can hear it, because I think you'll know what's going to happen, but I'll play this, because there is one little interesting element.
What are you doing?
The number of the combination lock.
What do you want it for?
I want to go to the vaults.
Why? We've laid Christina at rest. There's no need to go there.
I have every need, Giles.
I don't understand.
My asphyx.
What? Sealed off. No one can get to it.
But I must.
To ensure that it's safe. I'll do that for you.
I am going to release my asphyx.
You no longer want immortality.
Damn to eternal guilt. Damn to eternal remorse.
And if you release your asphyx...
But keep the combination lock. It's here somewhere.
I asked you if you release your asphyx.
There's nothing stopping me. I want only to atone. I want to join my children whose deaths I hold myself responsible for. I want to join Anna.
We made a pact, remember?
And now I ask you, release me from my obligation.
You were to immortalize me.
But can't you see that Providence is not to be tampered with?
Between us, we have killed the woman we loved. How am I to expunge my guilt? That may take time. So I must become immortal so that time is mine. Besides, I must survive to carry on your work.
Then I will keep my promise. If you feel impelled to carry on with the experiments, then you surely must. But in return, you must make me one promise. When I have immortalized you, release my asphyx and let me end my life. Let me join my children.
Right. So what Giles tells Cunningham is basically that now he has inherited his mania and that he wants to keep doing the experiments, right?
Yes.
Then that night, we see Giles go into the room, find the combination, and burn it, and put it into an envelope that he hides inside his jacket. And you go, oh, okay. So he was bullshitting him because he doesn't think he should be allowed to die.
Is he punishing him?
Yes. So what happens is they set up the experiment, and this time the way they're going to kill Giles is they're going to fill a box, a sealed box that he's in, with a poisonous gas. And as he starts to die, now he's rigged the water line, he's got the guinea pig in a cage, and he's got an automatic switch that will allow the light to stay on while he runs the box. Because it's a 2-person job, but now he's figured out how to do that. So he hooks up, so the glass cage comes down, seals on the bottom. There's 2 intakes. One is the poison gas. And then he says, and just in case something happens, I have another canister with oxygen. I'll turn off the gas for the poison and I'll put on the oxygen. And that way, if there's a problem, we won't have to worry about it. And he goes to check the crystals in the booster light. And Giles says, don't bother. I've already got it set up. I want to get this done as soon as possible. So he doesn't check the crystals that he was talking about, the phosphorizing whatever crystals, in the booster light. So Cunningham doesn't check it. He takes Giles' word that they're the right ones. And of course,
so Giles is just killing himself.
Yes. So Giles wants to kill himself with the combination burned with a letter basically telling Cunningham what he's done. So the box comes down, the poison gas starts, Giles starts to die, at which point Cunningham tries to turn the booster light on and realizes it's not working. So he runs over and turns the poison off and turns the oxygen on and starts flooding the chamber with oxygen. At which point we see Giles, with Cunningham's got his back to him, he's on the other side of the room. Giles takes out a matchbook, lights the match, and blows the fucking room up, killing himself. And basically Cunningham's fine. He just kind of got knocked down, right? Oh, and he had slipped the letter into Cunningham's coat pocket before this so that he would find it. So he blows himself up. So now Cunningham is all by himself. Cunningham is now realizes, well, no, actually he doesn't. I don't think he realizes that Giles had killed himself. No, that's right. He doesn't, because he keeps saying, now I've killed you too. He doesn't know. So he now thinks he's killed Giles as well. So now he's completely falling apart. So he goes down the stairs to the vault he thinks, open it up and let himself out. And he takes the letter out. And as he does, he leans back and he says, I've killed all these people. What right do I have not to have to suffer for it? And he burns the envelope without ever opening it.
Wow.
Yes! Which is the little thing where I was like, whoa, this is fucking great. Right? So then he happens to see that the guinea pig is there with him, and he says, I guess it's just you and I till the end of the world. And we'll wander until I feel like until God has felt I have suffered enough, or something like that, he says. And so then it cuts back to the present, and we see him, and he's all disfigured and scarred because he can get injured. He just can't die. So he's all fucked up looking, and he's got the guinea pig. They're both alive. And you see him just like wandering around. He doesn't care anymore. He's been alive for so long now. So it's 100 years later. And he wanders in front of the two cars, which then it freeze frames as they collide on him. And of course, we know from the beginning that he's alive. So he survives. And so he's still just wandering around, and he still hasn't expunged his guilt, or there's just no God, whatever you want to take from that. And the movie ends. And the movie just ends with you hearing the sirens of the ambulance taking him away. And that's the movie. It's fucking great. I loved it. I thought it was such a, like I said, there's really no gore. There's no real, it's all the mania and the results.
It feels like a Fringe episode.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah.
I don't mean that as a bad thing. Like, in a good way.
No. No, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that's cool.
Yeah, and this was apparently based on an original story, so it's not an adaptation of anything as far as it says based on an original story by these two writers. And yeah. So I thought it was fantastic. I believe, where did I see? Oh, it's $2 on Amazon. $2. Yeah. But I think it is also on YouTube. Now the only thing about it is yes, it is. It is on YouTube. So, you know what? I'll link to that. I didn't check that beforehand, but yeah, there it is. And let me just check. Does this appear to be the movie? Oh no, this is it. This is definitely the movie. The only thing about it is, it was the original filmed version. They cut some stuff from it that they never found a clean version of the cut stuff. Mm-hmm. So they reinserted the original footage, which is important. I mean, I can't believe they cut some of this stuff. I'm sure it was a time thing, even though it's only, you know what? It's 99 minutes. I'll bet they literally cut 9 minutes from it. Let me see if it says, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's worth seeing, even though the footage is not as, you could tell where the difference is because it goes to standard definition and it's like full frame, and then the rest of it is widescreen and really, really in good shape. But it's still worth it because the sound quality is good. The picture is good enough, and those scenes are important. I really can't believe they cut these scenes out because they're not just throwaway scenes. They are actually important scenes where you see stuff. I don't remember the specifics, but I watched them going, really, they cut this? Because this is, character development stuff. So maybe that was it. Maybe they felt it dragged the movie or whatever. But $2. Yeah, I would have paid $20 for this. It was so good. And, it is definitely an older style film. It's mostly at their house. There's a couple times like where the guy gets hung, they leave for that. And there's maybe one or two other scenes outside the house. So it's mostly people in rooms talking, but it's these wonderful English actors. The delivery of these lines is most of the time in one take. You know what I mean? With back and forth, like the one I was playing you where he was talking to him about immortality. But like most of that is in one shot. So it's like this really great English actors working on this material. And the idea is neat. The thing where Giles, once you realize what's going to happen, I was shocked when he blew. I really didn't think he was going to blow the fucking room up. Because I thought, okay, yeah, he's At first I thought he actually craved power. And then when, you see him doing stuff, you're like, oh, he's going to doom him. And then he doesn't open the letter. So he realizes.
He dooms himself.
Yes.
Which
so
honestly, in a weird way, vindicates the character.
It does. I agree.
Yeah.
It completely changed. He's finally realized what his mania did and that he has to pay some price for it. And he does. I mean, like I said, at the end of the movie, he looks like he's been burned and cut, that he has suffered. And he looks like he's homeless. Like he looks like he's living on the street. Like he is truly in suffering for, like, he didn't really kill the first two. He was just trying to film them, but he was responsible for his daughter's death. There's no doubt about that. And he did make that guy suffer. Even though he thought he would be making him immortal, he still was. I mean, it's the idea of, that's why with executions, they're not supposed to suffer. It's the same idea. That guy was in misery for, I don't know, probably would have been 5 or 6 minutes of the worst pain you can imagine, where a guy's drowning in his own lungs. So he had lost something, he had crossed over. He crossed a line. So yeah, the fact that he realizes on his own, because you would think, oh, he opens the letter, realizes it's burned, and now he's condemned. But no, he condemns himself. He never gets to the point of opening it. He just destroys the letter before he ever sees it. So he never knew. So in his mind, he never knew about what Giles did. So he's punishing himself for Giles as well, even though Giles killed himself. So yeah, it's a great movie. I fucking loved it. And like I said, the acting alone would make it. It's just the line delivery and seeing these people that are really just, there's nothing to offset the fact that they have to deliver these lines convincingly. And everybody's good. And like I said, the psychological torture of the daughter, which is just horrible. When they've got her on that guillotine and she is terrified, it is a horrific scene, far beyond if they had, had her head spouting blood and flying all over the place. That's far worse, because she's trusting these two people who are torturing her with this idea, because you never really think she actually thinks it's going to work. Even though they've demonstrated, you can demonstrate anything you want, but when it's your head under a blade, you're going to have doubts.
Yeah, it's just very funny that they didn't come up with a way of perhaps something with a little more of a fail-safe.
Like I said, there's multiple points in the movie where you have to just go
with it. Yep.
Yeah, because like you said with the drowning, like neither of those people they drowned that quickly. I doubt it, but
yeah,
you just and they probably could have found, but whatever. You don't
I get it.
care, because it's the concept and the acting and everything else is carrying the rest of the movie. So if you can put up with an older style of movie, because some people can't, because there's no jump scares. Like I said, there's one instance where you see a bloody hand. And I mean, it's not convincing. When Giles gets blown up, they have to show him finding the body. So you just see like an arm coming out from under a table with some blood on it. And you understand he's exploded himself, which of course there wouldn't even be a hand, but whatever. So it's none of that. It's mostly just, it's character work. It's these characters in a place doing these things and you're going along with it. And that's it. So, but if you like that older style horror film, like a Hammer type film, it's very much like that, but without the over the topness of like Christopher Lee as Dracula type thing. Like it never gets to that point. It is what you realize the horror is of what's happening. And seeing this, because when he's talking to the daughter about trying to convince her, I almost captured the audio, but it chops back and forth a lot, and there's a lot of musical stuff in me. It would have been too long. But he is becoming maniacal. Like he's almost like, no, you don't understand. Immortality will give us all this power. Like you can see that he's now completely consumed by what he thinks has to happen. Like he has almost gone mad. And then, of course, the grief is the other side of that, where it has completely destroyed him. And that's where he's like, I have to die. And so now, it's all that stuff. So it's not a big gore and shock horror fest. There's not a lot of big special effects. The Asphyx itself effect is what looks like a rubber puppet, but you barely ever see it. And when you do, it's not that
this is like early Doctor Who. It's not. Yes. You're there for the concepts.
You're there for the ideas, not necessarily the perfection of the narrative or the execution. And honestly, the only part of the execution of this movie that fails is that Asphyx. It's the only thing, is that puppet is not great. The actors are so good. It's one of those things where just listening to those clips, it's so good. Like just listening to people who are seizing on their dialogue, and there's so much of it. I could have captured every one of his speeches, and they're magnificent. Like, I was just in love with this guy's voice watching this movie. I'm like, please talk more. Please fucking talk more. Because it was so good. And the guys playing Giles, like, their back and forths are excellent. It's just, and again, it highlights, we lose a lot of that in a lot of modern movies because it's, giant CG monster, or, the stunt work, and it's not the people. This is a movie where it's all about the actors for 90% of it.
Well, I mean, listen, I often say if the writing is good, you'll excuse the rest.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's a combination of the concept, because the writing, like you said, there's a couple of points where you sit there and go, okay, wait a minute, and there's a couple. But
delivery is so powerful.
Yeah, because they could have secretly on the guillotine, without telling the daughter, had something that would have stopped the blade from going down. They could have put a wood block in there that they didn't tell her about. She still would have been terrified. You know what I mean? There were places where if this was meant to be airtight, it would fall apart. But if you're going with it, which you are, because that's what this movie is, you don't care about that stuff. It's, okay, where is this going? And then again, I honestly did not see Giles blowing himself and the lab up. And the other thing that I didn't even think about when the movie was going, but then a couple of hours later, because this movie stuck with me for a while. I was like, fuck, he blew up all the equipment and the research too, because he blew up his entire lab. And he had been keeping it secret from everybody, because one of the people from his society comes around and he throws them out because he only thinks that he and his family deserve immortality. So everything related to this has been destroyed. No one can follow this work up. And he won't do it because now he's, basically in grief from what he did. So this entire line
he won't reproduce it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's a great movie. Yeah, don't go into it and nitpick everything. It's not a movie that's, as you brought up, Fringe, which is notoriously one of the most airtight narratives there is as far as trying to find plot holes. So it's funny you brought that up. This is not Fringe in terms of its narrative airtightness, much like the tomb that they sealed that guy in.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Peter Weller episode.
Yes, I thought of that as well. It's like,
that's why it made me think of Fringe. Yeah, Peter Weller creates time travel not so that he can save his wife, which will horribly change the timeline, but so that he can die with her.
Right.
This
is more or less the inverse of that, where this guy has now doomed himself to immortality because of who he's killed. Again, the nice detail being, we know Giles killed himself. He doesn't know that.
Yeah.
But that's the punishment. So Giles still achieved his punishment, even if he didn't make it obvious. Giles's intent was not passed to Cunningham, but instead the weight of his death passed instead. And isn't that worse? Because Cunningham, knowing Giles did this to him, could be angry at him and might have offset his anger. But accepting guilt for something he actually didn't do is worse. Like I said, I love this fucking movie. I'm sorry I didn't watch it sooner. So certainly for $2, well worth it, just for watching these people do this material and for the concept. So very, very happy I watched it. And for that cheap, I would recommend it without even thinking to anybody who likes or, is able to, I just say likes older style films like this that feel like a time machine kind of movie, but with the Hammer concept. Great movie. So it was so good, I stopped there. I'm like, I'm not even watching anything else because I don't want to talk about anything else. I want to go out with such a high note that there's nothing else to speak of. So
good.
That is it. Unless you have anything else.
No, that was it. Yeah.
Well, go watch The Ass Fix. It's great. It's on Amazon Video for $2, and I've linked if that's too much, go watch it on YouTube for free. Enjoy your weekend. Don't try to capture anybody's ass fix of the person that you love. We'll talk to you next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.